And that means it's bug season. Heck, who am I kidding? It's always bug season in Texas. And that's why you need Grandeur Pest Solutions in your corner. They're locally owned and operated. They're trained, they're trustworthy, and they have a proven record as they have been in business for almost 10 years. They provide pest control against ants, bed bugs, bees, roaches, fleas, wasps, mosquitoes, rodents, spiders. If it crawls and you don't like it, they're probably going to take care of it for you. Now, they serve all of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they're locally owned. These two guys have been running this business since 2013, and every year they get bigger and bigger. But you know what they still do? They still have great customer service. In fact, if you get a hold of them, they're usually going to have your quote and your job ready to go within 48 hours. That's pretty good. Now, you can call them for a free estimate at 469-809-1769. You can find them online at Grandeur4, that's the number 4, shore.com. You can also find them on Facebook. Just type in Grandeur Pest Solutions, and we are so happy that they're title sponsor for Outdrink the Coverage in 2023. We talk high school football, 4A, 3A, and 2A in Texas. We talk East Texas sports. We talk NFL, guy talk, movie and booze. We also talk wrestling and so much more. So like and subscribe and check us out.
That hot and spit on that thing. You get me?
Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
Time for the old time happy hour. Pick up your step and smile a while. Time to sing along with
2
friends.
weeks ago, we picked the AFC, and this week on the Outdrink the Coverage Happy Hour, brought to you by Grandeur Pest Solutions, we're also now picking the NFC, and we've actually had some breaking news today. I am Terry Bennett. That is intern Noe the Pro. Before we get into all that, intern Noe the Pro, how are you doing and what are you drinking?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Tonight, I'm trying something different.
Man?
Stellum Bourbon.
Oh,
It's distilled in Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee. You'll like this part, it is 57.49% alcohol. Very boozy.
Wow.
So I automatically added one of my whiskey cubes to it. But it's delicious. It has everything I like in bourbon: brown sugar, cinnamon. Yeah, it even has like a little bit of a fruity orange zest to it too. Man, it's good. I'm enjoying this tonight. So
it's strong and it tastes good.
yeah. So and I think since you've been wanting something like this for in season, just to sip on while watching games, I think I'm gonna recommend this one to you. It's only $40 right now. They have 4 different versions. Varieties, and they range from this one. This is a cheaper one, $40, and then they have expensive ones close to $100. So I might have to get that for you in a couple of weeks when I come into studio for week 1.
Yeah, week 1 of the NFL season. Intern Noe the Pro will be here for the Monday night game. San Francisco versus the Jets, I think it is.
Oh, you know what, man? I have been very bad this offseason and looking at the schedule. I know the Friday game in Sao Paulo, the Packers and Eagles. But yeah, Monday night is going to be the New York Jets at the San Francisco 49ers, which is good because, Aaron Rodgers grew up in Northern California and, he's a big 49er fan. So this is kind of him returning from injury and returning to the Bay Area where he grew up.
Yeah, and he'll be able to blow out his other Achilles heel before
come on, man. Come on.
I'm just saying that could happen.
I really want them to be healthy. I've never hated the Jets.
Yeah, you're a big Aaron Rodgers fan. You follow his podcast and you believe in a lot of his stuff, isn't that right?
Ivermectin, bro.
Hey, why didn't he just rub some of that on his heel? Yeah. I mean, it should have worked. And what everybody claims. No, I want him to be healthy too because the Jets are such a even when they've been good, like the 2 years, the back-to-back AFC title games, it was kind of like, that was real fluky. Even back-to-back, it was real fluky. And then in the early 80s, when you had the sack exchange, they just were never consistent. It just, for whatever reason, they've never been able, even in the Joe Namath era, they've never really been able to put together just 4 or 5 years of just quality football where they're hey, you can lock them into the playoffs. And to be fair, if Aaron Rodgers is healthy or they have a good backup, I don't remember who their backup is, and I don't mean that as a joke. I'm saying
Tyrod Taylor.
Okay, he's not going to turn the ball over. They have a roster that I don't think people understand is really, really good. Go look at how bad that offense was last year, and yet how they still stayed into games. And there was a point in the season last year where they almost swung back into the playoff race.
Yeah, they ended up finishing 7-10 for, I think, a second consecutive year. But that defense is still there. As long as Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, that's a team that could come out of the AFC and represent that conference in the Super Bowl. But, I told you in the AFC podcast that injuries don't happen consecutive years to that extent. And for the whole AFC East, they were injured. Almost every team in that division was injured. I think that's going to be changing for this season. And I'll be really curious to see who comes out of there. But I already told you, I think Miami's going to come out of the AFC from our podcast 2 weeks ago, but
but you're very high on the AFC East as a whole. Like you feel, and you're not wrong on the injury thing. Either it doesn't happen back to back, or it happens like 3 years in a row. There's never in betweens. But you're high on the East. I wasn't as high on the East as you are, but it's not. Again, if you go back and watch that show, I don't have a lot of bad teams in the AFC. I just feel that there's a war of attrition that's going to go on because top to bottom, the AFC is so, I don't want to say it's better than the AFC. It's just deeper. There's not a lot of difference between the first team that was going to get the number 1 seed and the last playoff team in, and even maybe the last playoff team out. So I totally, the AFC to me is the hardest one to pick. And it was the one, I didn't spend a lot of time on the NFC. It was pretty cut and dry for me because I still think there's a pretty broad dividing line between 8 teams and then everybody else.
No, I completely agree with you. The NFC is kind of the same as last season, except maybe there's a couple of teams that might enter the second or even the first tier. AFC was more of the crapshoot where you had to figure out, okay, there's 8 legit teams that could potentially represent that conference in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Anyway,
I totally
how are
agree.
you doing, sir? And what are you drinking?
I am good, and I am drinking a new drink as well, a drink that there's a really, really, really good chance that we're going to be talking more about later on in the future of this show around Thanksgiving through the Super Bowl, but was down in Corpus for my annual go down there and kind of just chill for a week before the whole season starts. If you only know us through this show, I also do high school shows. We also, college shows. We do a ton of shows. I'm doing like 31 shows this year. And then we also travel for games and stuff. So I like to go down there to Corpus for, a little just chill and relax. And the now studio fiance at the moment, or at the time, found this American Beach whiskey. Now, this one is island coconut. They also have a cinnamon. This does not in any way taste like whiskey. Like it tastes like rum. I'm guessing it legitimately is a whiskey. You can't say it's a whiskey. It's not. And I don't mean that as a knock. This is wonderful. This is all the coconut rums we like without all the sugar. And I think maybe that's where the whiskey part is. The only negative is it's only like a 52 proof. So this isn't something you lead with. It is perfect for shows like tonight, because I'm either wanting to drink harder, like you're talking about proof wise, or lesser. I just don't want to drink vodka on every Monday because I know where I go with that. And so I'm drinking this tonight. And this is one why I have you a bottle. It's already over there on the studio waiting for you. This is like my new favorite summer drink for sure.
I cannot wait to try that in a couple of weeks. I remember you raving about it last week when you were on your trip. So, yeah, can't wait.
All right. So before we begin everything, we started a new thing last week or 2 weeks ago, I should say, where it started actually from an old thing that I used to watch or read. Blackie Sherrod used to do Dallas Herald, and then he moved over to the Dallas Morning News, and he did a little weekly, just what about, where he would talk 20 different things. I miss those old columns like that where you would just talk 20 different things, and he'd always end it with a scatter shooting. I wonder what happened to. I think he started it with the article with it, and it would always be somebody like Phil Pozderac or something like that. And so you and I last week started that with Jacob Green of the Seattle Seahawks, even though they had moved over to the NFC. When he played, he was AFC. So this week, I'm bringing up, and we'll do a shot to this man, Ruben Mays, who that's not the right one. That's the NFC pick. There we go. Ruben Mays, who took the NFL by storm in 1986 with 1,300 yards as a rookie, 8 touchdowns. He was part of a Saints franchise that was starting to finally find their footing. Unfortunately for him, injuries then became a big issue. He had 900 yards his second year, and then he had 600 yards before tearing his Achilles. And that was back when you tore your Achilles, you were out for 2 years. Like, it was guaranteed, and you never did come back normal. He never came back normal. But he was fun to watch. I remember him as a kid, and I loved the flash in the pan running backs, the Ickey Woods, the Ruben Mays, the Julius Jones, even though Julius Jones did have a little bit longer of a career than, Parcells, you F that one up, you son of a bitch. I'm just saying, Steven Jackson in 2007 with Tony Romo, whoa, that's a completely different team. Anyway, sorry, not bitter at all. But anyway.
You really don't know if that was going to – I mean, Marion Barbarian –
Dude,
the Barbarian,
dude,
he was
dude.
Great.
No, I love Marion Barber. I love what Marion Barber did. Rest in peace. We'll do this shot will also be for him. But you're trying to tell me that Marion Barber was anywhere near what Steven Jackson could have been for Dallas?
No.
Exactly.
Because Parcells would have used him. He would have been a workhorse.
Exactly. And nothing against Marion Barber. I loved what he did, but Steven Jackson was Marion Barbarian. You got me doing it. Marion the Barbarian with speed and with actual ability to cut and stuff. Marion just ran forward. Anyway, to Ruben Mays, and now rest in peace, Marion Barber.
Greatest Washington State Cougar of all time. Maybe the greatest Canadian NFL player of all time. Ruben Mays.
It's funny you bring up Washington State because I was looking at his college stuff. Mm-hmm. This was in an era where every team had a running back who would get like 1,500 yards. And so you go look at his stats, and I'm just going to say, I'm going to pick his junior year. His junior year, he had 1,637 yards. The dude averaged 6.3 yards a carry with 11 touchdowns, and they were 6-5.
Wow.
If you had a 1,600-yard running back now, you're probably at least 9-3, 9-4.
Easily. Yeah, he was a running back for them in the early to mid 80s. Like you said, he came to the Saints at a time where Jim Mora just got there. They were on the come up. Jim Mora loved to play strong defense, running game. He was kind of set up. I mean, that New Orleans team could have had a different trajectory had Ruben Mays stayed healthy.
Yeah, and one thing looking back at that time, everybody thinks about the Aints, and the Saints were terrible. And you think of that in the 80s. They brought in Bub Phillips. He tried to bring in Earl Campbell, and they tried to bring in Kenny Stabler. And Kenny Stabler had one of the most epic, how the hell did you lose that game against Dallas and things like that. And I think I was at that game. If my dad's listening, we went to a New Orleans game back then, and I can't remember which one it was. I just remember it was really, really hot, and I think it was that one because I think it was a night game. It might not have been. But anyway, they really weren't that bad. There was an 8-8 year there. There was a 6-10. They weren't as terrible as they were in the 70s. But yeah, Ruben Mays was the beginning of that. And I agree with you because, they had Dalton Hillier was a really good running back for them, but Ruben Mays and what Jim Moore wanted to do offensively would have been outstanding because one of the knocks on Moore was the offense was terrible. Look, Bobby Hebert was fun, but he was not a great quarterback, or at least to be a playoff type quarterback.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like you roll forward that to 1991 when actually Bobby Hebert from 91 to 93 he was actually one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. Some people forget about that because just he was injured in 91 and then he was a backup for the Falcons in 93, but he came on late. Actually, it was his only Pro Bowl season, and that Falcon team wasn't that good, but he was pretty good for that team. In 91, they were 8-0 or 8-1 with Hebert, and then he got hurt. But they only had Dalton Hilliard and I forgot the other running back, but it was just like a running back by committee approach, like what the Cowboys are attempting to do. Late breaking news: Dalvin Cook is in Dallas now. He's maybe for a visit, maybe to sign a deal. I don't know. But
yeah, what are your thoughts about that? What if
does he have anything left in him? It's kind of late in the game. He won't be ready for week 1. Like he might get a carry or two.
Well, not only is he, he didn't look good with the Jets. I don't really feel he does. Is this a situation? And look, I'll be honest with you. Shoot me because we cover the NFL, but I ain't watched one damn moment of preseason. And I'm pretty sure Zeke hasn't got any carries. But is this we realize Zeke doesn't have it, so we're going to bring in Dalvin to replace him? Because if you're just bringing Dalvin in and you're getting rid of a Deuce Vaughn or a Didwittle or somebody like that, I feel like he's just the same guy that Zeke is.
Well, 2 years ago when the Cowboys had Zeke, they also had Tony Pollard. So even 2 years ago, they knew that they needed a complement to Zeke. Now, I think Dalvin Cook's kind of the same player that Zeke is at this stage.
That's my point. That's my whole point. I don't think he's a counter to Zeke. That's why I'm wondering if maybe Zeke in practices and stuff, because his deal isn't that big. It's not going to kill them to cut him. I just kind of feel like maybe Zeke isn't, he's showing he has nothing left.
He's still under 30, which is just mind-boggling to me how his game just deteriorated so quickly. I really think he could still get 800 yards with this offensive line. Maybe I'm just naive, or maybe I'm just living in the past like a typical Cowboy fan would, but I really think he can contribute. There were spots where with those Patriot teams that Patriot team last year where he contributed pretty well, but it's just spotty. But if you talk to other fans of football, they'll say, "Oh yeah, he's lost a step. He should be retired by now." But I feel he can contribute, just not as a 30 carry a game running back, but maybe a 15 carry a game, a couple of catches out of the backfield. I still think there's a spot for Zeke in the NFL.
Well, again, I think maybe this is just due diligence. Bring him in, see what he can do, go from there. But bigger news for the Cowboys, and then don't worry, we're still doing an NFC preview show, I promise. Bigger news for the Cowboys, though, is that CD Lamb is signed. A 4-year, $136 million deal, $30 million down payment. That's how they should start looking at those bonuses.
Yeah.
A $30 million bonus. It gets him in. And again, I know Jerry dragged his feet. Look, they knew what the number was going to be. And what's the point of getting him in before camp at this point? CD Lamb, you don't have to worry about him. He's a workout warrior. He works hard in the offseason. And also, I know this is going to sound crazy to y'all, but in 2 years, this still is going to be a discount.
Yeah.
And that's the thing people don't understand with some of these deals. They sound, oh my God, but for the foreseeable future, outside of the pandemic year, the cap is going to keep going up. And the new TV deal that's coming down the pike, it's going to go up. There's going to be a point where everybody keeps saying, well, you can't sign Dak and CD Lamb and Micah. Yeah, you can if they want to. I still think part of that isn't necessarily a monetary thing. It's more of, is this the guys we want to go forward with?
And I'm hoping one or two of our key players that we want to keep implements what a lot of legendary players have done in the past, like Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, where they'll take a discount for the betterment of the team because they want to fill their roster full of stars in order to increase their likelihood of making it back to the Super Bowl, let alone even winning it. So hopefully, like we talked about this off air, we hope Micah Parsons maybe does it, DeRon Bland does it.
Well, I don't think
maybe.
Bland, Diggs kind of did it, but I think Diggs' agent or maybe Diggs himself understands that, yeah, there's a lot of interceptions and stuff, but and I like Diggs, but Diggs is not a shut down corner. You don't put him on the best guy and not worry about that guy. Bland's the same way. I don't think Bland's going to break the bank. I do think Micah Parsons, again, at least the things he says, and again, that can all change when you get to an agent, I think he'll take a little less. Now, here's the thing that bothers me as just a fan, because you and I talk about it. You and I are both very much in the go get your bag, get your money. But when you're Dak and you've already got $100 million deal, you really need another $60 million a year? And I get $100 million is generational money. And again, if he wants to take the money, that's fine. But don't then be unhappy if you can't build a championship team around you. We are in a dividing line as far as quarterback salaries, in my opinion. You have to make the decision. Do I get paid all I can, or do I get paid really, really good, and yet I can still go off and get more talent that'll help me?
It's just how his mental aspect is. Like, is he the type that wants market value, as I was telling you, or they just want to get their ego stroked and want to get as much money as possible? Because like whatever they're making, it's going to be enough for them for life and for their kids and their grandkids. Especially if you hire a financial advisor, put your money into some CDs or investments and live off the interest, you're going to be fine. More than fine, really. But it's more, to me, the ones that get market value is more of an ego thing. They don't really care about team success. I think they just want to be known as the best receiver in football, or best running back in football, or quarterback, or whatever. Because if you allocate all that money to one player, you're not going to be a team that's going to really compete, because you're going to be deficient in other key areas. I mean, you got to build the offensive line. You got to build the defensive line. Special teams is just as important too, as we see in the NFL with kicker. You got to get a kicker, you got to get a punter, got to get a good kick coverage, punt coverage. So you can't build up this roster if you're allocating over 50% of your salary cap to one or five players.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think we are definitely setting up a situation. I know there's been some talks that supposedly that Jerry was like, hey, we're going to get CeeDee Lamb done and then we're going to get Dak done. I even told you it wouldn't shock me. Dallas is pretty good about doing the whole week of the season starting. We've signed a guy. But I still think there's also all right, we're going to let Dak run it this year like we did a couple years ago, and we're going to see. And if he doesn't, we've got CeeDee Lamb, we've got a number one wide receiver, we've got Micah Parsons. We'll draft us a quarterback, or we'll find us somebody, a Kirk Cousins or somebody like that, and we'll run with that for a couple years and see what happens.
That could very well be the case.
And for the record, I like Dak. But I will say this, and this is one of those fun conversations we'll have on one of our happy hours. I think Romo did more with what he had than Dak has done with what he had.
Ooh, I wanted to immediately agree with you, but then I had to take a step back and think about that. But I'm only mainly thinking about it because of like Romo's later years, where they actually did build up one of the best lines in football.
And they won when that happened.
Yeah, when DeMarco Murray was healthy for a whole season.
And they won when that happened.
Yeah, when Des Bryant was healthy for a whole season. I know.
No, I'm just saying. The difference is, though, is God dang it, I'm trying to get lighting. The issue with all that is that there never was a time, even in 2007 when they made the playoffs, even in 2009 when they made the playoffs and won a game, even with DeMarcus Ware, a Pro Bowl player, and Greg Ellis, a very solid player, and some decent guys at decent spots, there never was a time when Tony Romo was there that you felt this defense can win them a championship.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said, the 2009 season was probably maybe the one exception, but 2014 for sure, no. 2007, no. And then really 2006, no. I completely agree. Because stat-wise, Dan Quinn's defense was top 5, although to me there's big asterisks on that.
That's a good point.
But It is what it is. I still think Dak can win a Super Bowl. He's a quarterback capable of winning a Super Bowl, but I think about 20 other quarterbacks in the NFL that can do that as well. Just got to put the pieces together. If he repeats what he did last year, there's a strong possibility Dallas will make it really far. When we get into the NFC, I just have issues with the lack of investment they put into the running game. I love what they do with the offensive line. I love that they today got CD Lamb on an extension, but outside of that, I don't really. I love Mike Zimmer, defensive coordinator, but man, when Jerry Jones said all in, I'm still waiting to see what he's referring to.
Again, we got to stop.
We've talked about. I know. We've talked about this plenty of times on the show. I'm just waiting to see what happens. I'm really just wanting to fast forward to after this season to see what Jerry Jones actually is going to do.
Well, and I will say this, and you and I have had this discussion as well, because I love old school football. I think you're still stuck in we need a run game. Kansas City has proven you don't need that at all. Like you need.
Whoa.
What?
Whoa. They were running the ball a lot more than you think in 2023.
Yes, with different backs is my point.
That's very true.
That's my point. Like you don't need an Ezekiel Elliott to be 1,500 yards. And you could also make the case that the Chiefs ran the ball at times just because they were like, hey, we don't want to get hurt. We got our guys. We know we're going to make playoffs and all that. But no, I don't think we can say Dallas is making a philosophical shift, which I agree with. I don't think it's a bad one. Now, I'm not saying the running backs they have in the room today are the ones that I think are great or good enough, but I think if Dallas can get 120 yards a game with their backs, they'll be perfectly happy. It doesn't have to be one; it doesn't have to be that many.
Yeah, that would be more than enough. To be honest, if they even get 100 yards a game from the running, that I would be happy with that. I was assuming that it would be like a 400-yard run season for Dowdle, 400 for Freeman, 400 for Zeke, something like that, where they're just evenly distributing it. And then one of the three is going to be one of the main pass catching running backs as well.
Yeah, I can see that.
Samaje Perine, who has, as of today, is looking for a new team. So.
Again, unless he has looked bad in camp, I would rather Perine than Dalvin Cook.
Exactly. He will offer a different element that the other three running backs on the roster cannot.
Yep. All right. Let's go ahead and get into what we're here for, and that is NFC, not just Dallas Cowboys, not just NFC East. In fact, we're going to start out west, young man, and we're going to hit the NFC West first. This is so I know your picks. I make all this stuff for the graphics. I know your picks. And if you listened to our AFC show 2 weeks ago, you and I were vastly different. Like we had one playoff game right, together. NFC, we're a little different, and we'll show the seeding when we get up here. We start now, but this is where we do have a difference. The NFC West. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Of course, the favorite and the team that everybody's still looking forward to. I feel like they're at the same question mark that Dallas is, just that they at least get to the Super Bowl. The San Francisco 49ers, they've been into 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls, both losses to Kansas City. They, have a good chunk coming back. They lost some guys, but, nobody that it depends on with Brandon Ayuk, but nobody that you go, oh my God, they lost them. I think San Francisco's basically going to run it back and be basically just as good.
Yeah, they lost a few defensive stalwarts and Chase Young, he was there for half a year, but still.
Eric Armstead.
Rick Armstead, Javon Kinlaw, and Tayshaun Gibson, an awesome safety. They lost those players, but they also got Malik Collins, which you and I, from watching the Cowboys and then also watching the Texans, know he's a really good run-stuffing defensive tackle.
Yeah, and look, I know there's people, and I like, Player Pro Football Focus. That's Chris Collinsworth's website. That's kind of the site that everybody uses now for ratings and stuff. There's a couple, and we'll use them in our debates and our talks and stuff. There's a couple things you need to know about them. Those aren't like playoff people football people that are grading that stuff. It literally is a farm in India, like an Indian farm mill, like you see with like data center and stuff, and they break it down. But also they always, for some reason, have hated Malik Collins, and I don't get it. Like, no, he's not spectacular on the stat sheet, but he's exactly what you want a tackle to be. He's going to fill the A and B gaps. He might not make every tackle, but he's gonna cause more problems just plugging away. And I think he fits very well in the San Francisco system.
He reminds me of a lesser-known A'Shawn Robinson. A'Shawn Robinson, he came out of college with bigger expectations. He never lived up to them, but he found a role as a really good and cheap run-stuffing defensive tackle who will always have a job in the NFL because he's big and he can stop the run. And a couple years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I think you and I were talking about we want him in Dallas because, one, he accomplishes what we need in Dan Quinn's defensive scheme as it is that at that point in time. And he was cheap. He was like $2-3 million. So, yeah. But yeah, Malik Collins, he's going to be a great addition. He's the underrated signing for the 49ers. I think that's going to take them over the edge if they finally break through this season. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Exact comparison with the Cowboys as far as this is a make or break season. And I think the Brandon Ayuk issue is going to linger on through the season, and that could affect the team in a negative way. It might precipitate some changes after this season.
I think he'll play nice. He was, people forget that last year he started the season kind of slow. And I had him on fantasy. Now I remember there was the what's wrong with Brandon Ayuk and all that. And he made some waves about, hey, just give me the ball. But he played nice and ended up having a really good season. I think he'll play nice once the season starts. I mean, maybe he won't. I don't know. For them, it's simply going to be the same thing. Can Kyle Shanahan's system work when you just have a good, okay, not amazing quarterback? I saw some stats and I really meant to pull them, but I was down there and probably drunk off my mind. It was literally the first, however many games Brock Purdy has played as a Niner. They matched that with how many games that Jimmy Garoppolo has played as a Niner. And they even matched it with how many games as Colin Kaepernick played. And they all were almost identical, down to the win percentage, down to the touchdowns, down to the INTs. Everything was almost identical. And two of those have been in the Shanahan system. And you could also make the case that what Harbaugh ran back then was kind of the same idea of physical football, throw the ball down the field, but we're not throwing it 38 times a game. We're going to run through the tackles and then hit you over the top. And so I do think that this is the great this is the great experiment. And I've been fascinating to watch this. As much as I want Dallas to beat San Francisco, there's a part of me that wants San Francisco to win the damn Super Bowl so people can go, hey, wait a minute. We don't have to pay a quarterback $200 million. We can reset that and start allowing teams to build deeper rosters with a big salary cap. I just don't know if they can with Brock Purdy.
I can't believe a Dallas Cowboy fan is wanting the 49ers to
I'm a fan of the NFL, sir. A fan of the NFL. I mean, but you said the same thing. We both feel like we loved what he was doing, and he does it with Debo and stuff. And they started that with Cordell Patterson of his last year there as an Atlanta offensive coordinator. I like a lot of what he's doing offensively, but they're going to have to win. You can't. I mean, I know it sounds really stupid to say, but if they make another Super Bowl and lose, I could see him being fired.
Which is crazy because every other team be like, oh, yeah, I wish I could even make it out of my own conference.
Oh, he would be the hottest. There would be teams that would then fire to get him. I mean, he wouldn't be long, but it's in that he's in that weird situation. Marty Schottenheimer never even made it to the Super Bowl with the Chargers or the Browns, but that's why Marty Schottenheimer got fired in both. He was really good up to a point, and they just couldn't cross that line. And so, with San Francisco, we'll have to see. I also think you've already heard that they've been really banged up at camp. Ricky Pearsall, the guy who basically they drafted to replace Ayuk. One of the reasons I don't think they've traded Ayuk is Pearsall can't stay on the field. He hurts his knee, then he hurts his shoulder, then he has a concussion. They said that Christian McCaffrey's been banged up. That's again, we've talked about this before. People don't understand. It sounds good when you say you're a physical football team. The problem is if you're a physical football team, sometimes you get hurt in practices, and sometimes you being physical actually hurts you because because you hit hard, you also can be hurt. If anybody that's played football can tell you, even when you hit and not the hitty, it still hurts. And so San Francisco got to deal with that. All right, now let's go to my hot team of the NFC, and that is the LA Rams, because for all the talk about Kyle Shanahan, I think the best coach in the NFC and a guy that rivals Andy Reid is the head coach of the Rams. And I think they have quietly had one hell of an offseason. And I know everybody's going to talk about Aaron Donald, and that's true. That sucks. But I have a friend of mine in LA that claims, and this doesn't sound too off, if the Rams start good and it looks like they're heading to the playoffs, he wouldn't be surprised if Aaron Donald said, you know what, let's do this one more ride halfway through the season. The Rob Gronkowski, I'll see y'all in week 10. But anyway, I like the Rams this year. I like the Rams a lot.
I would be shocked if Aaron Donald came back, because he's already gotten a Super Bowl. He's been a multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year. He's regarded as the best defensive player of all time. And that was all accomplished 3 seasons ago.
I mean, you could say all the same things about Gronk before he did that 2 years where, he came back week 8 and then Tampa Bay, he comes back. I do think that, and I don't know if Aaron had that same itch, because Aaron had flirted with, there was a lot of people thought when they won the Super Bowl, he was going to retire. There is that case of maybe Aaron doesn't have that love of football, but I'm just saying it would be interesting.
You look at their schedule, it's going to be pretty tough to start. They play Detroit and the 49ers, the Packers, the New York Bears. And it softens up later after that, but they also had to play Miami and Philadelphia. And
wouldn't you rather play the Bears early than late?
Oh, 100%, sir.
And I'm still not sold on Green Bay. And, they beat the Cap. No, I'm just saying, how many times do we see that? How many times do we see that quarterback that has that 8-game stretch where he gets really hot, they win a game or two in the playoffs, and then he can never find. And they bought the farm quick on him. Hey, good for y'all. I'm not against Jordan Love at all. In fact, I think I might have them making the playoffs. I can't remember. I just think that they reacted way too quick with what they offered him.
Yeah.
But anyways, back to the Rams. I like Tre'Davious White signing. You can make the case that, Brandon Fisk, the defensive tackle, you can't replace an Aaron Donald. I know I said Donaldson. But I would say one of their issues might be, can the run defense still be really solid? But when you look at this roster, and when Matt Stafford got healthy last year, this is a really, really good, solid, deep roster.
Yeah, they added some pieces last season, and the biggest loss for that defense outside of Aaron Donald is their defensive coordinator, Raheem Morris, who is the new head coach for the Falcons. We'll get to them later.
The Falcons.
Yeah. They have a lot of good young talent on that defense, and then, like you said, Tre'Davious White, who's had some injury issues recently with the Bills. He's going to be a great veteran presence. Getting Darius Williams as well, and Cameron Curl, that secondary is going to be very underrated this season. And that defensive line, I think they'll have picked up a few little tips from Aaron Donald, because I'm pretty sure a couple of those guys still have his number, and they'll be hitting him up for some tips. And I'm pretty sure Aaron Donald's still going to want to go to practice.
Hang on, here's the problem. I remember, they always said, Larry Bird always said, he was a really successful coach, but he said it was always tough because he didn't understand why people couldn't do what he did. So I can see Aaron now in defensive line practice. All right. So what you want to do is you want to take on the guard, throw him off. You want to take on the center and then throw him off, and then eat the fullback. And the other guy's like, okay, but what if the center tackle or blocks me? Wait, what? What are you talking about, block? You do not let them block you. Sometimes it's hard for the stars to really teach.
It really is. That's why Michael Jordan wasn't really good when given opportunity. There's Magic had some success, But yeah, it wasn't long lasting. And then Bird only did it for 3 years, and probably because he was frustrated teaching lesser
he
than.
said 100%. That's what it was like, because he was actually successful as a coach.
Yeah.
He won games, and then he went in the front office and he did the anti-Jordan, and he really built some underrated Indiana Pacer teams that unfortunately, because they couldn't get past certain lines, like we always talk about, they get lost the time. But anyway, this is us. This is what we're doing. NFC preview somehow becomes the NBA.
Yeah. So the last draft they had was really good, and then this year's draft for the Rams is really good. Getting Blake Corum for the from the Wolverines is going to really help. Him. Yeah, that running game was Kyron. Kyron was really good last year for them as a starting running back. I think having Blake there supporting him was going to be great.
Because Kyron gets hurt.
Yeah, Kyron gets hurt. So I was really high on Zach Evans going there when they drafted
TCU.
him. Yeah, when they drafted him last year.
Yeah,
TCU and then Ole Miss. But we'll see. Maybe he'll show up this year too. I don't know.
Zach, I don't know if you know, and this is not knocking on him, but because when he was in high school, but like he literally missed the state championship game because he broke team rules. He's always kind of battled that. And so, but talent wise, if he ever assimilates into the program and buys in, I just like you, he's year 2, he can still do some really, really good things. All right. So for me, the team that's the most interesting, because I'm going to say that 100 times, but because for all we've changed, we have a new coach, they sure look like they're still doing the exact same thing. And that's the Seattle Seahawks, who you and I perfectly predicted that, hey, you know what? They're going to be perfectly fine last year. And I'm going to say it again. They're going to be perfectly fine this year. I don't think they make the playoffs. But again, I don't think that's because they slip. I just think other teams have surpassed them. But Seattle's a team that week in and week out, that's either going to look really good or look really bad. All depends on what Geno Smith and or Sam Howell does, because don't be shocked if I don't think they give Geno as much of a leash, because he really struggled through the middle part of the season last year.
He really did, and I am not sure what year 3 is going to bring with Geno Smith in Seattle. That 2022 season was just ridiculously good for him, and I was very happy for him. You were happy for him, and you got $100 million for it for 3 years. So, I mean, good for him. I think with this team, man, I was really high on when they got Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas a couple years ago in the draft. I really thought that was kind of cementing that offensive line. And now they have Laken Tomlinson at guard and Connor Williams at center. That was a big weakness for them, and they've been addressing it. Now, they got the defensive coordinator from the Ravens, Mike McDonald, I think is his name. He's the new head coach, replacing Pete Carroll, longtime coach for the Seattle Seahawks. He's a defensive guy, and this young defensive team has potential. Leonard Williams, you got Jonathan Hankins in free agency. They got Jerome Baker from the Dolphins in free agency. We talked about Dolphins 2 weeks ago. I think this is a really good team, but it's like you said, they'll be just fine. I don't really know. I really don't know the makeup of this team, because they have 2 really good running backs, Zach Carbono and Kenneth Walker III. But they also have DK, and Tyler Lockett has 1 or 2 good years left. They got Jackson Smith and Jake Buff, local guy.
Who I think is going to start to explode this year.
Yeah. And then they got Noah Fant at tight end. So you see the pieces, and this team has been together for at least 2 years. So you think there should be some familiarity, unity. There is potential, and especially if they wear those old school uniforms the whole season. They won't, but if they did, oh man, at least it would be one of the prettier teams to look at.
All right, let's go back to.
They're going to be 9-8 this year.
Well, hang on, yeah. So they were last year. Let's go to Arizona now. So I want to go ahead and say this. I feel that the NFC West is closer to where they were 5 years ago, when everybody talked about this is one of the toughest divisions in the history of football. All 4 teams were just really, really good. I think they're closer to that. I think Arizona has the biggest upswing from where they were last year. I don't think it's enough to get them into the playoffs, but I think it gets them 8-9 wins, and it shows them that they're ready to move forward with what they have. Now, in saying that, that all depends on what Kyler Murray is going to be, because I think there's a perception that him and Will Levis have the same thing from last year. People remember the first game that Will Levis played and he threw 4 touchdowns. And then people remember when Kyler Murray came back, he had a couple plays that were just mesmerizing. And they think, oh, well, he had a really good year. Yeah, when you go look at how Murray played, he didn't really play great. He didn't play terrible, but he's still not playing like a top 10 pick. And leave us the same way. But in saying that, I think this team has done a really solid job of rebuilding a roster that went really shitty really quick.
Yeah, it definitely did went to crap. But, this is Jonathan Gannon's. Yeah, this is Jonathan Gannon's second season. First season, Dobbs started most of the season, or really the first half. Yeah. They were very competitive in their losses.
We will not talk about that one win they had that never really happened.
That sort of kind of cost the Cowboys the number 1 seed.
Be ready 20 years from now when we do a look back at the 2023 Cowboys, and it's just a crying face with Joshua Dobbs on that effing end around, that play action rollout. And this is when I think I even messaged you. This is why Dan Quinn is not a great defensive coordinator, because it was like everybody shot the same gap. Like it looked good. 11 Cowboys went to the same gap. Oh, wait, Dobbs is over there and he's running down the field. But anyway, sorry.
I like the offseason moves. They had all these draft picks in this draft, and they got the jewel, Marvin Harrison Jr. The name says everything right there. He's the son of Marvin Harrison, the Hall of Fame wide receiver for the Colts.
And he's going to be better.
He's going to be better.
I don't know if he'll get the stats or be a Hall of Famer, but just pure physical football player. He's faster and he's stronger.
This team is probably going to win 6-7 games, but they've improved their offensive line. They've done everything you're asking for a team that needs to advance further.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how good they're going to be, but they're on the right path. They need another year. But for now, 6-7 wins would be a success in year 2 of Jonathan Gannon. And just carry that over into year 3.
Yeah. All right. So who do you have winning the division? Give me your rundown on 1st through 4th in this division.
1 would be, it's have to be the 49ers, of course. This is they're like Dallas. This is their make or break year. 2, I would probably go with the Rams, and then 3, Seattle, 4, Arizona, just like it was last year. But I think all 4 teams have done enough to be better in 2024.
Yeah, I agree with that. I disagree with you, though. I got the Rams winning the division, and I got San Francisco finishing 2nd. But both teams are double-digit wins. It's kind of like the East last year with Dallas and Philly, which also could be the East this year with Dallas and Philly. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. I think that Seattle is 9-8 just like last year, but I think this year that doesn't get them into the it's just they're right there at that door again. Yeah. And then I have Arizona, but I'm like you. I think Arizona is going to look really, really good at times, and they're going to lose some really tough games, but you're going to feel better about them going forward. All right, let's go to the South, because the South, to me, outside of Dallas and Philly and where people have them, and it's still really just them two. I know some people are trying to be like Jaden Daniels in Washington's going to surprise them. Maybe they will. And some people,
honestly, I really think that there's something there in Washington.
Yeah, for the next head coach.
Go ahead, continue.
No, I agree, though. I think Washington's better this year. I think the Giants are the team that's going to really slide. I know in the North you've got Detroit and Green Bay, but a lot of people still feel it's 2 and nobody else. In the South, there is still a case that you can make, right or wrong, that there's 3 teams that could win this division. And if Carolina takes a step forward, they could surprise people, because I don't think a lot of people think the South is that good. I will contend that the South is going to be way better than people think this year. The South will rise again. Oh, wait, sorry.
Not that.
I don't know where that came from. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, with Carolina, they were 2-15 last season, but they did the best thing. They hired a good offensive coordinator in Dave Canales.
I mean, after firing a good one in Brady.
Frank Reich.
No, but remember they had Brady as offensive coordinator, and they fired him back into Matt Rule.
I blame Matt Rule for that one.
I do too, and that really think about. Let's just say that it kept Brady. Let's say Rule doesn't, and they fire Rule. Brady as your head coach last year, I think is completely. You and I both were like, you and I when Buffalo fired what's his name, we were like, that's stupid. And then when they hired Brady, we were like, that's brilliant because you and I are very high on Joe Brady. I think Joe Brady is one of the offensive geniuses of the league. He just was in a terrible spot in Carolina. But anyway,
so Joe Brady was the offensive coordinator. Just for people that are listening that don't know, he was the offensive coordinator for the 2019 LSU Tigers that won a championship. Ed Orgeron was the head coach, but that was the famous LSU Tigers, one of the top 5 all-time single-season teams. I think Terry would
greatest offense ever, probably in college football. I mean, seriously, we can, and it's really hard because you have to talk about styles and stuff, and you can look at 1973 Oklahoma, man, but they ran the wishbone. They ran for 5,000 yards. 69 Texas, 61 Texas. They're the ones that started the wishbone. But when you just talk about pure explosive and strength at every position, LSU just absolutely. In 2019, it's just amazing what that talent and how great it was.
Joe Brady was put on the map with the development of this Ohio State quarterback who transferred over to LSU.
Go ahead.
He had a solid 2018 season,
but was not. Oh my God! Nobody thought of him as a top 5 pick. Nobody thought of Cool Joe or any of that until LSU.
And the quarterback we're talking about is Joe Burrow.
Ryan Ripskin.
Right. Burrow at quarterback. You had Jamar Chase at wide receiver, and you also had Justin Jefferson at wide receiver. And then you had a tight end named Thaddeus Moss who didn't pan out in the NFL, but his dad is Randy Moss.
Yeah, and he was solid there. And I still remember that UT-LSU game. Really, all jokes aside, Texas was like the only team that challenged them that year. And I remember messages like, dude, LSU's not getting beat as long as he stays healthy. And they didn't even get challenged like you would think and everything. But anyway, I'm not saying Joe Brady did all that because, these were first round talent guys. But like we said, Joe Burrow was just, there was a lot of, he's not going to do good in LSU. He might be okay. He was okay there, and all that. But anyway, this is Carolina now. Year 2 of Bryce Young. I'm rooting for him. I just don't know.
They have Ekwonu at left tackle.
Yes.
They had the big signing of Robert Hunt in the offseason from Miami. That was
a shock.
That was a shock because Carolina had other needs as well. But, of course, protecting your number 1 draft pick at quarterback in Bryce Young should be paramount. That's why they got – but they paid a lot of money for a right guard. And I didn't understand that, but I understand the need to protect your quarterback. So I guess they just felt that one position was a dire need.
That's also, again, going back to salary cap. You can do that because your quarterback is just now on year 2 of a rookie deal. So by the time you're ready to pay, if you're ready to pay Young, by the time you're ready to pay him, Hunt's gone. He's not going to be there in 4 years, at least at that salary. And by then he'll be, I think he's 25 now, so he'll be like 30. And that's smart. That is, you're allowed to overpay at those positions when you're going to have a rookie deal. Same thing with Larry Tunstall in Houston. Yeah. You remember when they signed him, I was like, what are they doing? Well, they weren't paying for a quarterback. It's easy to do that. And I'm going to say this, and I know it's, I'm touting a team that I follow in college, but I really like the Johnson Brooks and I like the Sanders drafting at tight end.
This is what I was going to say. I love everything they've done on the offense. They got Robert Hunt. They got their line situation addressed. They got the running back situation addressed because remember they got Miles Sanders, but he didn't pan out. They were more reliant on Chuba Hubbard last season than Miles Sanders. And then now they got drafted Jonathan Brooks from UT, who has looked fantastic in practice.
Yes.
Miles Sanders looks like he's probably going to be out on his way out of that team. And then they traded for Deontay Johnson from Pittsburgh, which I think that is a great target for Bryce Young. And then, of course, they have the veteran presence in Adam Thielen, their draft pick from last year, and Jonathan Mingo, receiver. So all of a sudden, these weapons are starting to look really enticing. Tight end, but Jatavion Sanders, like you said, is a really good prospect. They have a reliable Tommy Tremble at tight end for now, but I think the explosiveness of Jatavion Sanders might be really intriguing. And let's see him develop. He has who was a tight end for the Chargers in the 2000s?
Antonio Gates.
Yeah, he has that potential, in my opinion. From what
Jatavion?
Jatavion Sanders.
Jatavion Sanders in 5 years is the best tight end in the NFL. I'm calling it now.
Okay.
This dude, I've seen every game of his in college. I saw a lot of his high school. He played at Denton Ryan. This is a dude that is athletic. He's fast. The only reason he didn't put up more stats in Texas was he struggled with injuries. Now, in saying that, last year, 45 receptions, almost 700 yards. That's 15.2 a click. Like, and you're talking about an offense that had 2 first-round wide receivers, or basically 2 first-round wide receivers. Xavier Worthy, Adonis Mitchell, Jonathan Brooks. He was hurt. You had, the year before that, you had Jordan Whittington, who's really starting to show how he can play in the NFL when he's healthy. So, I mean, this is a dude that I legitimately feel like he is going to be absolutely dominating as long as he's in that right system.
So everything on the offense has been improved since last season, including the head coach, who will be a de facto offensive coordinator. Defense, we talked about him earlier. A'Shawn Robinson, he was signed. He's going to be great for them along the line. And then
Kalavion Chasen.
Yeah.
I like Clowney too.
Yeah, I like Clowney too, a veteran presence.
And it's funny to think about that because there was a time where he underperformed. And I will say, I think Clowney's career should have been way higher. I legitimately think Clowney could have been a J.J. Watts, a Lawrence Taylor, a DeMarcus Ware. He never quite became that. But what he has done is he has niched out a very solid, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to get 20 snaps a game, but also reading what some of the Carolina, and some of that can sometimes be bullshit, but reading Carolina players saying, like, since he came into camp, he's really helped us with, the veteran things that we always talk about. I really like a lot of the moves Carolina's done. Now, can their owners stay out of the way? That's going to be the biggest issue.
I was just going to bring up David Tepper.
Yeah.
I think if he can stay out of the way, they won't only win 2 games this season. I think they're on the cusp of 6 wins, kind of like with Arizona. I think both teams have made enough improvements to where they'll get to 5, anywhere between 5 wins with injuries to 8-9 wins when they're fully healthy.
No, I agree. I think they're going to be better, but they're still going to be bad. You know what I mean?
It won't be good enough to make the playoffs.
Oh God, no. Now in this division, though, there's a chance that they could pull some wins because, so I'm gonna jump up to a team that I think is going to have the biggest plunge, and that's the New Orleans Saints. I love the Saints. I always I don't really have a third team because the Oilers, but growing up, you and I've talked about that. Where I lived, I got to watch the Cowboys, the Saints, and the Oilers almost every week, and that was in that late '80s. Hence why we did the Reuben Mays. You had the best pure 4 linebackers in a 3-4 that maybe ever assembled, and so I always liked them. I loved it when they won the Super Bowl. But, man, I think everything they've done going now, I mean, Dennis Allen just wants to be fired. I don't like him as a coach.
Man, because, like, some of the moves they made, like getting Chase Young and Willie Gay, are really good moves.
Oh, no, they're great moves.
But this is an older team, and I'm not sure what direction they're going to – because the moves they made in the offseason, including their draft, still suggest they're going to be 9-8. And that's not good enough for the money you paid Derek Carr.
Wait, you think 9-8?
Well, because they still have a strong defense. They're just a year older. I think this is the last year of like the Cameron Jordan.
Jordan Cameron?
Demario Davis, Honey Badger. I think it's the last year for
Oh
that.
crap! I forgot he was Steve. I mean, he's a dude.
He's still good. Like
he's good, but like he's another dude. Not quite like Jadeveon Clowney, but not far off. Where you would have thought at this point of his career, we're talking, hey, that's a Hall of Fame type guy, and he has a really good resume. And sometimes it's unfair expectations. Look. I will say this. I have New Orleans winning 4 games. I have Spencer Rattler, which, by the way, I think Spencer Rattler might be a guy that ends up being a really good quarterback. But no, I have the Saints absolutely plummeting. I think they're trash.
There was a reason why Spencer Rattler was considered a top 5 pick a couple years ago, and then he had to transfer. Because Caleb Williams took over at Oklahoma. He needed a fresh start. He did. The record doesn't suggest it, but South
Carolina.
He played really well at South Carolina. Yeah. Put him in an offense that has Chris Olave, Jawan Johnson, a really good and big tight end.
Underrated.
Yeah. Just let him cook.
I think this team is, and I like Derek Carr, but I think Derek Carr is going to be labeled with the not quite Jeff George, because he never was petulant like Jeff George. But let's be honest, or no, maybe more like an Andy Dalton, where it just sometimes he just doesn't look like he really cares if, hey, if we win, great. If we not, you know what? I'm going to go down to Bourbon Street tonight and get a BJ from some dude or chick. Who knows? No, I don't like Dennis Allen. That was the mistake. And I get it. He was your DC of a really good defense. I think Dennis Allen's a really good defense coordinator. If Dallas were to get him, let's say, next year Mike Zimmer moves on, I'd be 100% happy. I just don't think he's good at overall. And I just think this is a really bad roster. And that's not all on him, but that's what you got to deal with. So I really have them falling.
It's a bad roster in the sense that there's a huge ceiling on them. And the ceiling for me, like I said,
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's a 9-8. So like there's no movement upward. They might win the division if other teams get injured, but their ceiling is 9 wins.
All right, so now we got Tampa Bay. This is a team that you want to talk about could be all over the map. I could see them winning 4. I could see them winning 11. I could see them winning the division barely because, like you said, everybody in the South is still a year away. Atlanta doesn't develop quite as quickly. Carolina's almost there. I could also see them winning, 5 games and just being trash. This is a team that it's really badly constructed, but somehow they've made that work, and good on them. But I just feel like a lot of things happened last year because Atlanta was bad, Carolina was bad, and the Saints were inconsistent. Did you spill something?
No, I had to put my charger.
Oh, you had to plug in?
Yeah, I had to plug it in.
That's because we keep talking so long. But yeah, I Tampa to me is the quintessential, if we played 16 games, 8-8 team. I feel they're going to be like 8-9, 9-8. I just don't think this year it gets them into the playoffs like last year.
Yeah, I really think Randy Gregory is a good example of what you're just saying, because he's kind of the who's a Jets player that's wanting to get traded. He just signed with them.
Oh, geez.
So
why did you ask me?
I was putting you on the spot, brother.
Son of a bitch.
Is it Hassan Reddick?
Yeah, Hassan Reddick. Yeah. Former Eagle.
Yeah, so I think Gregory doesn't seem like he wants to play for the Buccaneers, so he was a big addition for them. But they got Jordan Whitehead back. He was the Jets last season. I think that was really good. But they did lose a lot on defense. They lost, a trio of long-term Bucks and Shaq Barrett, Devin White, Carlton Davis. So I don't know how good that defense is really going to be. I really don't. I have no feel for this team. I know they gave Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield $100 million contracts, but I agree with you. Without Dave Canales as their offensive coordinator, I really don't see this team making the playoffs or having a winning record.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that last year beat Minnesota in week 1, 20-17. And I remember, if I remember correctly, Minnesota was kind of controlling that game and just kind of Minnesota'd it. They were able to beat the Saints 26-9, but then they went on that 4-game losing streak. And then they beat the Titans, the Panthers, the Falcons, Green Bay, and that was an interesting game because that kind of switched them. But then they beat Jacksonville, who by that time was cratering, and then they lost to the Saints. And remember, they had to win in Week 17 to get in the playoffs, and they played the mighty Carolina Panthers and beat them 9-0.
Rain soaked.
Yeah, but in saying that, they beat Philadelphia 23-9, and then people forget they took Detroit to the mat in that game. You know, that's part of the reason why, and you'll see when we come to the playoff picks, I know a lot of people are putting Detroit in the Super Bowl. A lot of people are putting Detroit in the Super Bowl, but I'm still going, they almost got beat by Tampa Bay.
They were a team learning how to win last season, Terry.
Oh, is that what it is?
That's the excuse I always give.
All right, so let's move now to, I think, the team that is the Detroit of the 2024 season. Unfortunately, they were supposed to be the Detroit of the 2023 season, but, you know, hey, that's what happens when you have Arthur Smith as your head coach. But I do like everything that Atlanta's doing, except for their first-round draft pick. I'm sorry. That is stupid.
They had Dallas Turner right there.
Yes, and even if Michael Penix Jr. is a legendary guy that's going to turn into a Hall of Fame guy, you don't sign Kirk Cousins for what you did and then draft Michael Penix Jr. Because here's the issue. Well, I say that, but shit, Green Bay literally did the same thing with Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love, and that's kind of worked out for them. But I just wouldn't have done that because Dallas Turner on this team,
dude. You know what? Dude, I think Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins were about like 35, 36 when they signed those contracts in 2020.
Yep.
Oh, man.
I mean, it might work. I just didn't like it.
Dude, that's about the same age. Like, literally, that is scary.
It is. And if you'd assigned Cousins to a 1-year deal, and I know NFL deals don't last, but it felt like Atlanta was saying, hey, we want you here for 3 years. It's just, I think they outsmarted themselves right there. Like you said, there's a guy right there that immediately helps your team, immediately makes you better.
It better work or that GM is going to get fired because it seemed like the Blank family and GM were not talking to each other.
You say that, but I mean, if let's say in the next 2 years with Kirk Cousins, they make a title game, they make the Super Bowl, I think people forget about it. You know, it's the same thing we talk about like the Rangers in baseball. Jacob deGrom, terrible salary, terrible contract. Max Scherzer, okay. But you know what? Nobody cares because they won a Super Bowl. I mean, a World Series. That'd be really good. They probably will win a Super Bowl for the Cowboys. Well, that's not the point. I know, dude. I'm sorry, but every other move that Atlanta has made, I absolutely love. I love Raheem Morris as the head coach. I love giving a team that has a ton of offensive talent, a defensive coach who is not Buddy Ryan and like, oh, our offense can only run the ball. He's like, I'm going to let my offense do their thing. I'm going to do my defensive thing, and we're going to win a lot of games. And I do think Atlanta wins a lot of games because as funny as the Arthur Smith was and as terrible as Desmond Ridder was, by the way, we're going to have a show down the road. Who was worse, Malik Willis or Desmond Ridder? As bad as Desmond Ridder was, this was a team that could have made the playoffs last year.
And they definitely could have made the playoffs last year, but mainly because the division was so terrible. I think Desmond Ridder lost them a few games they should have won.
Oh, God, he was terrible, dude.
On paper, they did everything right. Jesse Bates became the second best safety in football behind Antoine Winfield Jr. Calais Campbell was a good defensive presence along the defensive line. They did everything you would think they should do in 2023 offseason, but man, it just showed how bad of a head coach Arthur Smith was.
Yeah.
It's just some of that play calling, and like he just fixates himself on certain players.
I wonder though if he's a guy that if you give him a second chance, because they did do a lot of cool things. I don't know why they felt so like we can't just focus on Bijan Robinson as your guy, because I do think Bijan Robinson has that unique skill set to can be like a Christian McCaffrey that not only runs for 1,100 yards but could catch 1,000. And it felt like Arthur Smith and sometimes hubris. You feel like we got to outsmart everybody. And we can't do what everybody thinks we're going to do. But yeah, for this team this year, I like Darnell Mooney. I like Rondell Moore at wide receiver to add some depth. I'm going to buy into the Kyle Pitts one more time. I'm the guy that keeps drafting him in fantasy because I feel like this will be the year. But I really do feel like in this offense with Kirk Cousins, because you look at what Kirk Cousins has done with tight ends through the years, Fred Davis, Taylor Hawkinson when he was in Minnesota. I think I really like Atlanta this year, dude.
Yeah, and I know Rondell Moore's on the IR, but they still have London and Darnell Mooney and Ray McLeod the third. Yeah. So I think they'll be good at receive. It's still an upgraded receiver for this season, and then they have Cousins. Bijan's a 1,600 all-purpose guy, 700 running, maybe 800 receiving.
I think he hits 1,000 this year.
Only reason I said that he's not going to hit 1,000 because I know Tyler Algier is still a really good. He's still a running back one.
That's a good point.
And I think they might try to just switch it a little bit to where Robinson might be in the Marshall Faulk mold, but it's Marshall Faulk in his prime that has a running back too that could also start.
So and we're in a different era where you usually have a really good run. Again, that's why we talk about the Cowboys, and the thing we're worried about is if you have a good running back, you also have a really solid RB2 that can take up snaps.
So that's why I think like Bijan is capable of having 2,000 plus all-purpose yards, even more than that. Yeah. I just feel that because of this is a good problem to have because you have two really good running backs, you're going to be splitting it. So I think Algier might get the 1,000 yards rushing, but I think Bijan might hit close to 1,000 on both.
Well, and if you get in a situation where, you're week 5 and Bijan is just taking over, well, then you've got a guy you could trade for a 3rd-round pick and Tyler Algier. Because I'll tell you what, if week 5 of the season, if Dallas is 3-2 and the running game has struggled and we hear that they've traded for a 3rd-round pick for Tyler Algier, I would not be sad in any way. I think he's a really solid. His issue is he has no explosion, but that's fine. Like, you just plod sometimes. You sometimes just need the guy that can grind you down.
So I'm going to stick with my pick for the division in New Orleans.
All right.
But I was really tempted after the last few weeks where the Falcons went crazy on defense. They traded for Matthew Judon from the Patriots, a really outstanding
Dude, that's huge.
You and I both love Judon.
Oh, yeah.
Especially what a difference maker he was with those Patriots teams that were really not that good, but he kind of made them somewhat relevant. And then in the secondary, I know Brandon Perna with That's Good Sports, he wanted Justin Simmons, the safety for the Broncos, to come back. Yeah. But, the Falcons that was a surprise move for me. I didn't think the Falcons would even look at a safety, but they got Justin Simmons from Denver to come, and I think that really solidifies. They have the edge rusher. They have the secondary guy to back up Jesse Bates. That's the best safety duo in football.
Well, and Matthew Judon can step right in and as a pass rusher, we talk about trades in season. I don't like wide receiver trades in season because they've got to learn, even if it's the same-ish, you've got to learn new things. I don't like Roy Williams.
Yeah. No, 2018.
Wait. Well, yeah. Okay. Mari Cooper's awesome. Shut up. Mari Cooper will probably be in the Hall of Fame. He should be at least. And I still rue the day that they got rid of him. I'm like, you could have made that work. And especially with what they traded him for. Especially when you look now, when literally people are saying he might be thrown in on a trade to San Francisco. Amari Cooper in San Francisco scares the hell out of me because he's they've got Debo. And they've got Ayuk. They've got these physical guys, but they don't have that one guy who just run routes like,
That would give me 94 49er vibes.
Yes.
Where they just went all in for 1 year.
Yep.
We got, Ricky Jackson and Charles Mann, like all these random veterans, but they also got like a Deion Sanders.
Tim Harris.
Yeah.
Really random dudes from the 80s. Hey, were you good in the 80s? Come on board. Or the 90s. But anyway, I think in this one, I like Atlanta. I don't think anybody else makes the playoffs. I think everybody else has a losing record. I think Atlanta dominates, starts early and just keeps on rolling. I'm 100% buying in. Now, when I make my picks here in the playoffs, people will be like, wait, I thought there's a reason. I'll explain it. All right, let's go to the NFC North. I think this is the one that when you look at it, it feels like there's not if Caleb Williams can do what we think he can do in Chicago, there's not a bad team in this division this year. That doesn't mean they're all going to be good, because I think there's a lot of questions. Minnesota now, basically it's going to be Sam Darnold, which I think might surprise some people. But anyway, how do you see this one working out?
This might be the best division in football this
Just
season.
Pure consistent. I agree.
I think it's going to be interesting because I agree with you. I think Sam Darnold is going to do better than most people expect. JJ McCarthy just impressed so much in the preseason that people think, oh, Minnesota's back. They had Aaron Jones from Green Bay. They got Justin Jefferson happy and paid. They're good to go. They got Darashaw paid, so they solidified their offensive line. Brian Flores had his mental health checked by Tua Tagovailoa, so he's in a better place.
Let's talk about that. Hang on, let's talk about that. So, if people don't know, last week Tua basically said on the Dan Le Batard show that Flores was just basically a terrible person to him. And it all tracks. The funniest thing is nobody has come out and tried to claim that what was said wasn't said. Brian Flores is that Buddy Ryan type of defensive coach that feels like the offense is only there to be problematic. And so he basically, instead of trying to build up a guy, tried to tear him down. And people say, oh, well, Tua's soft. Dude, Tua played under Nick Saban. And no offense to Brian Flores, but Nick Saban teared down players, but Nick Saban has skins on the wall. There was no need to tear down Tua. This was not a guy that came into the NFL timid or afraid. I mean, this dude stepped in halftime of a national championship game and balled out. I'm sorry. I like Brian Flores, and I think Brian Flores will eventually get a second chance. But I will always wonder, why in the hell did he feel the need to tear down Tua Tagovailoa? It just makes no sense to me.
Honestly, if this channel grows, I would love to do a retrospective on the 2017 Alabama Crimson Tide, because the talent on that roster, I mean, the first half of that championship game against Georgia, Jalen Hurts started.
And he wasn't even terrible.
But he was more known as a running quarterback in college at Alabama with a terrible haircut.
Oh, yeah, it was.
He went to Oklahoma and showed off he had an actual arm, and the rest is history.
Yeah, but I mean, we're talking about here in a minute. He's a guy that's on the, if he doesn't perform this year, where is his career going?
True, but there are teams that have a value for him, and yeah. I think anyway, off topic, but yeah, I think Jalen Hurts will be fine. But yeah, so with Flores, as far as the today, August 26th, there has not been a conversation between Tua and Brian Flores after that comment, other the interview Tua had. So I like to see what they talk about, because Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator for the Vikings, former head coach for the Dolphins, he didn't deny anything that Tua Tagovailoa said. So it must have been true. I was on Flores' side a couple years ago when he got fired, because I thought that they made a mistake. I thought he was a really good head coach, but having heard what I heard, now I have a different view. I still think he's a really good head coach, and I think maybe he might have learned from it. His defensive players came to his side in his interview, or his podium interview, whatever. So players still love him.
I mean, so did the defensive players to this day talk about Buddy Ryan the exact same way. Yeah. You're going to love the guy that coddles and loves you and makes sure that you succeed. I always have respected the Chicago Bears, that defensive players like Richard Dent that said, hey, yeah, we loved him, but yeah, he hated offenses. And not Jerome Brown. Oh, that's sad. Randy White. Jeez.
Maybe this was the best thing that's happened to Brian Flores. Maybe this will be when he gets his next head coaching job, because I think he will hit Dallas. I really think that he'll have learned from this, hopefully. And
so we're gonna go. We're gonna go after this year, 8-9, and like score 5 points a game.
Well, I don't know. We're gonna start. We're gonna start 1-7.
Oh, is that what it is? And then go down from there.
But then finish 7-2. And
I don't know, dude. Maybe he will learn, but again, Buddy Ryan never learned because he did the exact same thing in St. Louis or Phoenix, then Arizona, that he did in Philly. I just think I don't know what it is about defensive guys. Like you'll get the occasional offensive guy, like oh crap.
But we've had an offensive-minded head coach every year since the second half of 2010. So the next head coach for the Cowboys is going to be a defensive-minded coach. It's not going to be an offensive-minded coach.
That's a good point, actually.
So if you're going to do it, might as well find one that you and I both have some respect for. I like Brian Flores. I mean, there's other head coaches. I'm pretty sure in a couple of years.
This took a big hit for me. Tua coming out and saying what he said, and literally nobody. Yeah, they defended like, oh, we love him, but nobody said no, he didn't do that. That's a big red flag for me because that's going to be the issue he has in the next interview. It's not going to be what he does as a defensive coordinator in Minnesota because everybody knows he's a really good defensive coordinator. It's going to be, how are you going to change how you deal with a quarterback? Because, let's all jokes aside, let's say it is Dallas. All right. So if Dallas is making a coaching change, I'm pretty sure they're going to make a quarterback change. Do you want Brian Flores being the head coach of a rookie quarterback? I don't. And that's the issue. Anyway, who do you have winning the division? Oh, wait, we got to get to Green Bay. Sorry. This is why I love this show.
You want to just go through the teams really quick?
Let's just go through the teams because we're already an hour and a half in. We still got to make our playoff picks.
All right, so we'll start with Minnesota. I like they got Sam Darnold because J.J. McCarthy's going to be out for the year. Their top draft pick for a quarterback from Minnesota or from Michigan, undefeated season, championship. I don't like too much of. I mean, they have Hawkins. They have some offensive stars. I just don't think they have a complete team. They were 7-10 last season.
Fair. That's not a wrong point. I agree with that.
Because of a strong defensive coordinator in Brian Flores, I think they'll still be competitive. But that's why I think it'll be the best division in football. I think they might finish last in this division, but I think they might get to 8 wins, and some of it's just because they.
I can see that. That's a real because I'm like you. I don't know. I don't know if this division is the best in football, but I think it's going to be really tough inside the division. I don't really. I know people are really high on Detroit, and they should be. And I think Detroit is still really good, but I think there's going to be a lot of, when you look at the end of the season, a lot of splits inside the division.
Yeah. And with Minnesota, they lost Danielle Hunter to the Texans, but they did spend a lot of money on like good veterans like Stephon Gilmore in the secondary. They got Jonathan Grenard from the Texans. They got Andrew Van Ginkel from the Dolphins. So they got a bunch of they replaced Danielle Hunter with 3 edge rushers essentially.
Yeah.
But then they also get Aaron Jones, the running back from the Packers, who torched the Cowboys in the playoff game last season. So they have a proven veteran, Sam Darnold, quarterback. I think they'll be okay. But again, 8 wins, I think is their max.
All right.
I do love the fact they got Dallas Turner because the Falcons should have Dallas Turner. They made the pick with Penix. They'll have to live with that. I think Dallas Turner is going to be awesome for the Vikings. Yeah,
I think Dallas Turner is one of those that will slot in like a Micah Parsons where he's just going to dominate for years.
Yep. Yeah. All right. So Bears or Lions or Packers?
Let's go Packers real quick. I think Packers are, again, we said earlier, I think they're in that stretch where I could see them winning 12 games, but I could also see Jordan Love not being able to replicate for a full season the 8-game stretch. And hey, look, I like their coach. I think their coach is one of those that's probably pulling wins out of a roster that's not as good as what they look like in the playoffs last year.
I think 2023 showed how good LaFleur was as a head coach.
Yep.
Those first few years, they were winning 12, 13 games a year with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. So you were thinking, okay, well, he's not McCarthy, but he's just making sure Rodgers is healthy. They're running the ball more with Jones and A.J. Dillon. And then last year with essentially, this is a rookie quarterback in that case, but he's been there for 3-4 years. That second half to 2023 says everything. I mean, Jordan Love was looking more like Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
And what they did in the offseason was great. They got Josh Jacobs, a running back, after they lost Aaron Jones. So he got a bigger back, 3-4 years younger. AJ Dillon came into camp motivated. He's looking great physically. So we'll see how that translates in the regular season. Romeo Dobbs apparently has been taking a step forward in practice, and he's going to be the favorite target probably for Jordan Love.
I'm worried about their offensive line. I'm worried that I like Josh Jacobs. I really was hoping Dallas would be like, screw it, let's go get Josh Jacobs. But I don't know if he can replace what Aaron Jones does, because the one knock on Josh Jacobs is he's not a guy that goes out and catches a lot of passes, and Green Bay is very built on still. I mean, they're still using a lot of the same Andy Reid, Mike Holmgren, where you want your running backs to be able to catch screen passes. You want to use them out of the backfield. I worry about that. I worry about their offensive line. And again, I go back to, I worry if Jordan Love really is taking that next step. He's got to prove it. And all quarterbacks do at that point.
So he'll have some help, but not on offense. On defense, they got
they're really solid on defense this year, folks.
Well, they got one of the best safeties in football. Probably the best young safety in football, in Xavier McKinney from the Giants. And then they got one of the strongest leg kickers in NFL, and Greg Joseph from division rival Minnesota. So I think I always look at little things like that. I think
I like Edgerrin Cooper, the linebacker that they drafted. I think he's a guy that's going to eat up snaps and just make plays.
I think they're becoming more well-rounded. They're building around they're still a very young roster. They still have one of the youngest rosters in football. So people do not forget that. So,
and saying on that, it would not shock me if they technically took a step back, but still are good the next year and the next year and the next year. Because no offense against Dallas, but it's really hard to understand what the Packers did in the playoffs because they did it against Dallas. I mean, that's become a thing. Yeah. Everybody does it against Dallas. So you want to give LaFleur credit for the game plan. Absolutely phenomenal. Hey, the Cowboys don't have a run stopping linebacker. Let's just run the ball. You give them credit for that, but that also makes you think, okay, but what are they going to do this year if they make the first round and they get San Francisco? And I know they played them well in the in the second round last year, but you know my point. Yeah. But yeah, whatever Green Bay does, I still think this year, I still think Green Bay has a solid foundation to just be what Green Bay has done for the last 20 years, 25, 30 years at this point.
Yeah. I could see them ending up being the same as they were last year, a team that can make it to the divisional round, but it would still be a step forward. I think just the division is so much better this year than it was last year.
And if they, for some reason get in the seventh round and they actually play a really good 2 seed and they lose, you still don't think, oh, they got to tear it down. You'd be like, okay, hey, they lost on the road to a really good 2 seed. All right. I think the team, I think the team that's the most interesting, because it's got maybe the most polarizing draft pick in a while, and that's the Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams. I am a Caleb Williams fan. I wasn't as much last year, and I think we talked about this on our off-season happy hours, until I went back and got to getting on YouTube and you start watching throws and stuff, and I realized there's a lot of big misconceptions about him. People call him a diva, he paints his nails and all that. And I contend that that's leaders. Leaders do different things. Leaders don't just follow what everybody else did. And I think you've seen in game, it's not the amazing throws. What I've been impressed with is how he adapts in the moment to things. And I was watching, I watch like Chase Daniels, that he has a really good YouTube series where he breaks down quarterback plays. And he was saying for a quarterback to be able to process the information that he is at this point in his career is amazing. I think the Bears are going to be really good. I just don't know if it's this year.
I think they'll be really good this year. I personally don't have them making the playoffs only because of the talent that's in the NFC North, but they've shored up a lot of their offensive line issues. They shored up a lot of their defensive line issues. which to me, going into this season, was their biggest weakness.
Well, and hey, give them credit. They signed guard Keenan Allen.
Wide receiver, sir.
Zeke, famously in 2018 came in 20 pounds over, but he at least had it was wrong, but at least he had an idea like, hey, last year I got wore down. So Keenan Allen looks like a dump truck out there. Like, is this a dude that's checked out?
Look, hear me out.
Uh-oh.
Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett,
Keenan Allen, third tight end.
Belichick thought he had it figured out with 2 tight ends. But wait, Eberflus.
But the problem is
tight ends.
The crackback block is illegal now because, man, I would not want to go against Keenan Allen if he came down on the slide. I don't know. That's just weird because Keenan Allen's pretty well known as a dude that works hard and all that. I really do feel, right or wrong, I do think he has made a choice. I don't think he got lazy or anything.
Look, let me tell you something, man. Talent-wise, I don't think there's a single team in the NFL.
You sound like Andre in the league right now. Let me tell you something.
Let me tell you something, brother.
Let me tell you something.
Now, talent-wise, I don't think there's a team in the NFL that can match the Bears as far as running back and receiver. Let me tell you why. DeAndre Swift, who they got in free agency, Khalil Herbert, Roschon Johnson. People keep forgetting about him.
UT.
Those are running backs. 3 really good running backs. Wide receiver, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. I'm sorry. We're just going to assume he's a wide receiver. Wide receiver, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze. Also,
dude, he is going to walk right in and be a really good wide receiver.
And I've come a long way, too, because last year when we were doing, we're doing college football reviews, I kept messing up his last name. So now I know how to say his name, Rome Odunze.
Good job, buddy.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I needed that. Yeah, they have Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett and a 40-year-old Mercedes Lewis at tight end.
Who can still block and catch and,
17 catches, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. I'm calling it. That's what he's going to have this year. But, yeah, and then Darnell Wright was pretty solid last year at right tackle. So, yeah, I think what they have as far as skill positions is pretty stout, and I don't think there's any team. Now, obviously, I know you're a big Simone Biles fan, and I know you love the fact that Jonathan Owens, her husband, is signed with the Bears this season. I know he's the
defense is going to struggle, is what you're about to say.
No, actually, he's a pretty solid.
He's a solid player.
Yeah.
But outside of Montez Sweat, who technically I would count as a signing this year because they got him in the trade last year, but then they made the big deal. Outside of him, they're going to struggle on defensive line, especially in a conference that still, for the most part, is going to run the ball.
The thing is, they address everything else.
Yes.
And Sweat was one of the first players ever to lead 2 different teams in sacks in one single season.
Yep, that's what's really pretty awesome.
Yeah. So I think they haven't done enough. They've done what they could with the offensive line and defensive line, but that'll be their Achilles heel for this season. They'll be a team that'll be competitive for a playoff spot. I don't think they'll end up getting it. But I could still see them in the playoffs because of their skill positions on the offensive line or on the offensive side. I think that's all I have to say about the Bears.
All right, let's go to Detroit.
All right. So Detroit,
Lions.
I'm very high on the Lions.
I think everybody is. You put in the notes, some consider them a 1-year flat. I don't really know if anybody's considered them that. I think we just are all going, okay, let's see it another year. I think Jared Goff, again, proves the whole point of this. You've got to be a certain quarterback to do certain things is not true. And that's not a knock on Goff. I think Goff is a very solid quarterback. But I think we can all say that if you handed Goff a team with terrible talent, Goff would not be good. And that's the point you and I have made when we have to defend Dak and Romo and stuff like that is at some point, and I do feel that we are better as a sports fandom now it's not got to always be the quarterback. But Jared Goff, again, proves when you have talent around a solid quarterback, he can become a great quarterback. Now, does that mean that they can get him to the Super Bowl? I don't know. I think Detroit's going to be perfectly fine. I think Detroit has to face that where we see it 1,000 times in all sports. The team that comes out of nowhere, even though they were the hot pick to come out of nowhere last year. Can they replicate it year 2 when it's not as sexy and you're not you're not the high point? You just got to go out there and grind, and you're going to be the target now. Everybody that you play this year is going to think of you as the team that probably should have been in the Super Bowl if you hadn't screwed things up in the last couple of quarters. You're now the target. I do think they will struggle with that a little bit. I still think they're going to be fine though.
I think they'll be great. Getting Terry and Arnold in the draft would be good for their secondary.
I like that pick.
And also, what they did was they got a Mr. lineman and a Mr. secondary. They got DJ Reader to shore up the defensive line, to give Aiden Hutchinson some help. They got Carlton Davis from the Buccaneers in a trade to help shore up their secondary issues, which, Aaron Glenn might get fired if he cannot figure out how to develop a really good defense.
And I still think is their biggest issue. And I know he got voted, as one of the favorites, and that's fine. And I love Aaron Glenn. Played at A&M, really solid corner for the Jets. By all accounts, is a solid coach, but the defense is still a step behind this offense. And again, as much as Jared Goff played well, if that offense takes a step back, can that defense cover for them?
Yeah, I think it can, just because I think Marcus Davenport, another acquisition, is going to be very motivated, and he's going to have a lot of help because of DJ Reader. I don't think people understand how good a guy he is, especially with the Bengals a few years ago.
Don't forget Carlton Davis, dude.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, Carlton Davis as well. He's a great playmaker. And I think someone like Reader, along with Hutchinson, along with the rejuvenated Marcus Davenport, is going to create so much havoc in the backfield of the offenses that Carlton Davis and Brian Branch, the rookie or the second-year safety they got from Alabama, and Terry and Arnold from Alabama, they're going to just wreak havoc. And they're going to be getting a lot. I think the Lions might lead the league in takeaways this season because of the disruption they're going to generate from that defensive line.
All right. So
if that doesn't happen, Aaron Glenn will be fired, and they won't have as good of a season as everybody's thinking. But
so how do you have this division playing out?
Detroit's going to win this division, and I predict that they will get the number 1 seed in the NFC.
I have Detroit winning division. I have Green Bay at number 2. I'll go and say they both make the playoffs. I have Minnesota. I am so high on Minnesota, but I got to see Sam Darnold play.
And this is why this to me was the best division in football for this season, because you can make a case for all 4 of these teams to make the playoffs, just like with the AFC North, and for me, like the AFC East. But like for me, I have Detroit and Green Bay making the playoffs. Chicago is the next team out. But you can see they're going to be a team that's going to win the division in 2025.
Yeah,
and then Minnesota like a close 4.
I have Minnesota and Chicago both being like 9-8. 8 and 9, all of it coming down to one of the, and you and I've talked about this, and this is why I know people don't like the 17th game. Yeah, we do. Because one of the reasons why is you have so many teams that can make the playoffs. And for all the talk about last year, all the 17th, that was a fun last week because you had 100 different scenarios. And I think that's where the NFC Central is going to be this year. But right now, I have it Detroit winning the division, Green Bay being second, but it would not shock me at all if Minnesota or Chicago replaces. I think Detroit makes the playoff no matter what. It wouldn't shock me if Minnesota or Chicago takes the Green Bay spot. All right, let's go to the NFC East. I'm just going to say this now. The Giants are going to be terrible. Yep. The Giants have for a program that at times has been so consistent and so level-headed. I don't know what happened in 2015. But since then, it's just been shit, and it's going to remain shit. And especially when Brian DeBall says, hey, I'm going to call all the plays. So you're getting fired first. I thought it was going to be Dennis Allen, but you're getting fired first because this is just not a good team, man. There's not a lot of talent on this team.
There really isn't. I mean, it still reminds me of the 2022 team. I personally like that they got Malik Neighbors.
No, I like him.
I like Wandale Robinson.
Yep.
I actually think the receiving core is not the worst. Daniel Bellinger is going to get a chance to actually show he's the tight end one.
Yep.
Darren Waller retired.
4 years ago mentally.
Yeah, really. I do like that they lost Saquon Barkley to the Eagles. Get that out there.
Dude, that to me is the whole issue with them. If you have Barkley, you could have replicated 2022. You've got wide receivers and Neighbors and Wandale Robinson. All you're asking Daniel Jones is, hey, do like you did then. 20 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, run the ball well, and you're going to be fine. I just don't see it now because you don't have a running game that teams can respect.
This is a team that might get 6 wins. Even with a bad Daniel Jones. And I'm saying that because their defensive line is going to be so good.
Yeah.
Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, and then the big trade they made for Brian Burns. They're going to get pressure on the quarterback. And in their secondary, they still got a draft pick from last year, Deontay Banks. So I think their defense is going to be somewhat okay, like middle of the road, 13th to 15th ranked. But yeah, their offense, man, I nothing outside of Neighbors, nothing really intimidates me. I think that's solid. I think if they could be methodical going up and down the field, they'll win 3 or 4 games that they probably would not have won last year. But 6-7 wins is their max this year. And I really don't know what they're going to do with Daniel Jones. Some people even said Drew Lock is going to maybe finish out the season at quarterback just because of the lack of faith in Daniel Jones.
And I feel bad for Daniel Jones because I feel like Daniel Jones is an Alex Smith type guy where if you put him on the right team, and you saw that in 2022, if you put him on a team that you're not asking him to throw for 300 yards and you have a running game and all that, he could be solid. And he, to me, feels like one of those guys that ends up at a Minnesota or somewhere like that in 2 years. And you're like, wow, where was this guy? But yeah, this year I have them winning 2. I think they I think it's another regime change. It's another let's draft the next quarterback. All that after this year. All right, let's go to the other team at the bottom. But I think a lot of people are really high on. I don't know if it's fair or not. But Washington, Dan Quinn. All jokes aside, look, there's a lot of things that we can gripe at as Cowboy fans with what Dan Quinn ended up doing. But let's also remember when he came in where Dallas was defensively. He is the first defensive. I don't give a shit about Rod Marinelli and I don't give a shit about Mike Nolan and all. He's the first guy since 2009 that you really felt, hey, we've got a good defense. Like we have a really good defense. The problem is you saw the holes in that. I think as a head coach, I think he's going to do perfectly fine in Washington. I don't think they're as good as what people think they are coming into this year.
I don't think they're going to be able to get the pass rush he wants. They got Dorrance Armstrong. They got Jerzon Newton at the tackle spot. They also got Bobby Wagner at linebacker to shore up.
2 years too late.
Yeah. Exactly. And Dante Fowler from the Cowboys, they got him.
And I like him. But again, that's a first round bust that's kind of just niched out a really solid, okay career.
So, yeah, I don't really see their defense being as good as Dan Quinn would want. I think he had a pretty good situation with the Cowboys as far as that goes, as far as talent goes. But I will say the offense should be better. I really like Tyler Biadasz as center, former Cowboy. I think the right side of the line is going to be great. Sam Cosmi at right guard,
yep.
Andrew Wiley, who they got from the Eagles or from the Chiefs, mainly because of how he performed against the Eagles in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Allowed no sacks in that game. And then, to me, they got Zach Ertz, which is such a great tight end signing.
He quietly got better last year as he got healthier. Like, people forget about that. Like, everybody remembers that 2 years ago when he was traded to the Cardinals, he kind of or 3 years ago, he kind of underperformed. But that was because he was beat up. And he's gotten healthy, and he's that type of guy for a quarterback like Jaden Daniels he will absolutely need during the season.
It's a great move there. Drafting Ben Stenot as well. And then my favorite thing was outside of Austin Eckler at running back to replace Antonio Gibson, who went to the Patriots. I really like Luke McCaffrey as their third receiver.
Play out of Rice.
Yeah, played at Rice, brother of Christian McCaffrey, and the Commanders liked him so much that they traded they traded Jahan Dotson to the Eagles.
That move just blows my mind, dude. Like
he must. I think McCaffrey impressed so much that they were okay with doing that.
Yeah, but like you didn't get some kind of gold rush haul from the move, yet you gave him to a division rival. Like if the Eagles would have been like, hey, we'll give you a first. Okay, I get that. But giving him a third and I think a fifth or whatever it was, like, really? Like,
I really think they felt that they were just happy with who they got. That's how I interpreted it. But yeah, I don't. Part of me thinks that they can make a dark horse run to win the division because there hasn't been a repeat division winner in 20 years.
Yeah.
But if anyone's going to win the division outside of the Eagles, I think it might be the Commanders. I don't think the Cowboys are going to win this year. We'll get to that. But with Jake Daniels, Heisman Trophy winner at LSU, being their starting quarterback, they have a solid backup in Marcus Mariota. They have two solid running backs in Eckler and Brian Robinson. I still love Terry McLaurin. This is going to be a dangerous team. I think they're going to be a tough out. They will not get blown out. Mark my words. I will put some money on this. They will not get blown out this season.
I think they will be a better team at the end of the season than they were at the beginning.
Yep.
I still don't. I think 6 wins is like the highest of high. Like if everything breaks right, 6 wins.
And it'll be close losses to me.
Yes, I think there'll be a lot. And again, we joke about Dan Quinn, but the dude knows how to coach defenses, at least a specific thing. But I think you bring up a really good point. It's going to be a lot harder without a Micah Parsons. It's going to be a lot harder without a DeMarcus Lawrence. Just those two. Take everybody out because nobody, again, you can go back to the thing of outside of Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, the Dallas Cowboy defense is still very under-talented on just pure talent. I'm not knocking Diggs or Bland or the safeties. They're all solid, but talent-wise. And so I think we're going to see that he relied a lot on Parsons, and that made his defense look a lot better. I'm just not as high on you, but I don't think you're wrong. I'm just not as high on that. I think Jaden Daniels is that typical looks great in preseason playing against 3 third stringers. Let's see what he does in the first week. All right, let's go to Philadelphia. We're not going to Philadelphia because we think that's their second. Let's just go to Philadelphia so we can end on the Cowboys. All right, the Eagles, oddly enough, it feels like they might be more of the, oh my God, what if this season goes bad than even Dallas is this year. I feel like Jerry and them are real comfortable. Like, okay, if we work great this year, great. If not, all right, we'll figure it out. Philadelphia is, to me, has a crisis of like faith in what they're going to do. Cause they've rebuilt from 2017 and give them credit for that. All the jokes aside, they had a Super Bowl team that had a franchise quarterback. They won with a backup quarterback. And then you go look at who's on the roster now compared to just then, hardly anybody. Yet I feel like if they underperform in any way this year, they're tearing it all down.
Which is crazy to me because they have a lot of young talent, especially on the defense.
It's still a great roster.
It's still a great roster. It's still great talent all across, all under 30, except for Lane Johnson. So, yeah, I really – if you're going to I wouldn't tear it down. I would just get a new coach because clearly there was some issues with Sirianni toward the second half of year.
And Jalen Hurts,
yeah. Second half of last year.
But do you get rid of the coach or the quarterback in that situation? Because Jalen Hurts, again, we live in a world, and we understand it. Cowboy fans take a lot of flack. We live in a world where 2 years ago, everybody was talking about Dak and his interceptions and stuff. You go look at what Jalen Hurts did last year. He literally had the same type of season that Dak had the year before, where for half of the season he was an MVP candidate, and then for half the season he was really bad. I don't know if they go against the coach. It might be the quarterback.
Who knows? I have no idea what goes on in the Eagle front office.
Carson Wentz 2.0 in 2025.
Yeah.
Look at what he's doing with Kansas City.
Yeah.
No joke. Carson Wentz, and I know against 4th and 5th teamers, but Andy Reid has unlocked the old school Carson Wentz of 2017. But anyway, what are your thoughts on the Eagles?
Yeah, I still like what they've done with the draft. They keep getting Georgia Bulldogs, but I still like all the guys they keep getting. I like all those players. And then they got Devin White in the offseason from the Buccaneers. They brought back C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who's going to have to do a diss on the Lions, I guess, now, because every time he leaves a team, he has to diss them.
That's weird, dude.
Yeah. James Bradbury, I think he's on his last legs. They moved him to safety. I like that they drafted Kenyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. He was one of my favorite players coming out of college, Cooper DeJean.
He's been hurt for most of the camp, and he was absolutely terrible last week. But again, first game, I'm not knocking him on that.
Special teams demon, but also an outstanding secondary player. He was a guy that kept Iowa in the top 10 of the college football rankings for most of the season until he got hurt. And yeah, I mean, they had the Kobe Dean, Jeremiah Trotter's son is on this team. Big old Jordan Davis, and they got Jalen Carter. They got Bryce Huff from the Jets. So I really like the makeup of the defense of this team. And, of course, the offense is going to be great. Kelsey retired. Jason Kelsey, not Travis Kelsey, but Jason Kelsey retired. So
that's going to be a big issue, though.
That will be a big issue. Let's see what Cam Jurgens can do as the new center. But they still have Mailata. They have Landon Dickinson at left guard. They have Lane Johnson, a future Hall of Famer, at right tackle. I think they'll be fine. They'll be competitive. I'm assuming since no team has won the division back-to-back years in 20 years, the Cowboys are not going to win it. If they're not going to win it, then I'm thinking the Eagles might. But because of all the issues that happened toward the end of 2023, that's why I'm thinking Washington might be the actual dark horse to win this division in 2024.
I think the issue for the Eagles are going to be the same. If they can get over them, again, this is a team that I could see missing the playoffs, and this is a team I could see winning the Super Bowl. And that's where the NFL is today. Yeah. All right, so before we make our picks, let's move on to the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to say this. You and I, we have our issues, and we cry and all that. One of the things that I have really been impressed with this year's camp is there's been no news. Like everybody there, like you're not hearing people worried about Dak's contract or worried about CD Lamb's contract or worried about, letting Tyron Smith go or are we all in or are we? They're just all out there performing. Deron Bland being out 6 to 8 weeks will hurt. If you don't know, he had a stress fracture in his foot and he's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. Again, that's one of those things that I'd rather have it happen now than in November. Yep. So I think that's okay. And again, I think Zimmer's defense is going to be totally different. Mm-hmm. You're not going to have your corners sitting up in the face so you might not get as many interceptions, but I also don't think you're going to have as many big plays. It can be conservative at times, but in today's NFL, you and I have said this for 1,000 years now, or maybe 10. Just don't give up touchdowns. Give up field goals. If your defense gives up field goals, you will win. Yep. And that's one thing Rod Marinelli did really well. I give him credit when he was down. He was really good. And Dallas, I was looking at some stats earlier. Dallas over the last 10 years has been really good inside their own 30. That's why even when their defenses aren't great, they still perform well consistently.
Bend, but don't break.
Bend, but don't break, because we're in an offensive era. Now, in saying that, the problem with Rod Marinelli's defense and Dan Quinn's, and no, it's not because of Jerry Jones. It's just because of however, they haven't been able to make those plays when they really, really need it. I think that's where Mike Zimmer comes in. But in saying all that, I like Tyler Guyton. Apparently, he has really been just amazing. I like Cooper Beebe. I think he's going to be the next center. I know you've got Brock Hoffman, but a lot of people think Beebe's going to step in. I think Maurice Laufa has been a really good linebacker. We haven't even talked about that. Dallas made a couple moves in the last couple weeks to pick up some defensive line help that I think is going to be absolutely huge.
Who were those players?
Linval Parker?
Limbo Joseph. Yeah.
Joseph. I mean, that's a dude.
About that. Yeah.
That's a dude that was a Pro Bowler for the Bills, was a Pro Bowler for the Vikings, played for the Eagles. He's the exact type guy that Mike Zimmer wants to come in, and he's going to play first and second down. And he can actually rush the quarterback too, but he's going to play first and second down, and he's going to plug the gap, something that the defense has struggled with over the last couple of years.
And Carl Lawson.
I really like this move because so my belief is you're going to see Micah Parsons play more like a true linebacker this year. And that's not a bad thing.
Yep.
You're going to see him maybe not have 10 sacks, but he might have 130 tackles and 13 tackles for losses. But you've got to have pass rushing ends. And I think Carl Lawson will step right in. I think you're going to see DeMarcus Lawrence have a resurgence in as long as he can stay healthy in pass rushing, because Zimmer's going to ask your defensive ends to set the edge and rush up. Set the edge and rush up. And where Micah Parsons is going to feast is, you remember Dexter Coakley? You remember how when they set the edge and the quarterback would step up, that's where Michael Parsons is going to feast. And I really legitimately feel like all the talk about whether the Cowboys step back or not, I don't think they're going to step back as much as people think. I think this defense by the end of the year is going to be a better, sound, disciplined defense than they've seen maybe in the 2000s. And I really mean that.
I'm just so happy to see Overshown play a full season for the Cowboys.
And he could be phenomenal, dude.
And I'm excited to see throughout the season how Eric Kendricks' veteran presence influences the rest of that linebacking core. I think Damon Clark is a really solid linebacker. I think he can be elevated with a veteran presence like Eric Kendricks.
Now, the issue with this team is just going to be they're the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, that's really the issue.
That really is, yeah.
You said it best, and you and I have felt this way for a while now. You said it best. I just want to get through the season. And it sucks because that's the one thing you and I talk about. People today, all they care about that. But we're at that point with Cowboys. Like, we just want you to get through the season, dude. Get to the playoffs and let's see what happens. I think Dallas is going to be the same that they have been. You and I always do the list, and ESPN keeps just consistently saying, like, for all the talk about losing people, this is still a top 8 roster. Like, this is still a very talented team. Dak Prescott's going to go out and throw for 4,500 yards and 38 touchdowns. And CeeDee Lamb, who's now signed, he's going to, as long as he stays healthy, he's going to have 1,500 yards. Dallas is going to do everything that they've done for the last 3 years. And that's the most frustrating part, because we've got to enjoy the season, but always be going, but what's going to happen when? In saying that, I'm like you. Let's go ahead and give our division picks, and then we'll move on to the Super Bowl. I only have Dallas not winning the division because of the 20-year thing. That is a thing. I have Philly winning. I have Dallas making the playoffs. I'm not as high on Washington as you are, but I get your points, and it wouldn't shock me. And then I think the Giants just are terrible. Like, I'm so sorry, Quinn Ewers, quarterback of Texas. You're the starting quarterback for the Giants next year. I'm just calling it now. How do you have this division playing out?
Yeah, he'll be hoping Carson Beck from Georgia
plays better. I hope I beat you, but can you outplay me in this game? I need you to go to the Giants.
I have the same ranking: Philadelphia, Dallas, Washington, Giants. And I think Washington will be one of those teams, like with the Bears, they're going to be 8-9, 9-8, pretty close to making the playoff, but not making it at all.
All right, so here are our NFC picks. Intern Noe, the pro. You have the 7 teams being the number 1 seed: Detroit Lions 13-4, San Francisco 12-5, Philadelphia 12-5, New Orleans 10-7, Dallas 10-7, Green Bay 10-7, and Atlanta 9-8. You're kind of like me in the AFC. You just feel like there's a lot of teams that are within one game of each other. And I'm not too far off that. I have the number 1 seed being the surprising LA Rams. I'm telling you, folks, they're way better than people think. I have number 2 being Detroit, number 3 being Atlanta, number 4 being Philly, 5 being San Francisco, 6 being Dallas, and 7 being Green Bay. Let's go to the wild card round. It's funny that you and I are both really high on Atlanta, but we have them being beat in the first round. But I feel like either one, being beat by San Francisco or being beat by Dallas, Atlanta's going to be like, we're good. Like this is that learning process. We're going to be good. You have Green Bay beating Philadelphia. I like that. I have San Francisco beating Philadelphia. I have Detroit beating Green Bay in the wild card round.
That would be wild.
We got to have at least one or two same divisions playing each other. That just happens every year. And I love that. I'm all for it. In fact, for a while, so I was trying to decide. I was trying to decide where I wanted Dallas because I feel like Dallas is going to make the playoffs, but I had them at 5, Philly at 4. But I was like, I don't really. If I'm going to have the Rams winning the division, San Francisco's got to be the best wild card team. Like you just can't. I don't think Dallas finishes better than San Francisco. But yeah, so I almost had Dallas playing Philly. But anyway, in the divisional round, you have Detroit beating Green Bay. You have Dallas beating San Francisco. God, I love you. In the divisional round, I have the Rams beating Dallas, but I'm calling it now. This is going to be like 2019. Not in the way the game's lost. Not in the way the game's lost. We're not giving 200 yards up to some dude who came off the couch.
Okay.
I feel like Dallas is going to feel really good about themselves in a game. They're going to go out to LA. It's going to be close. They're going to lose on a field goal in the last second type. And Jerry's going to be like, you know what? We're there. We're there. We're one. He's going to go all in, baby.
Oh, man.
I have San Francisco beating Detroit. And then in the conference championships, you have, I would hate this, but love it, Detroit beating Dallas. I have the Rams beating San Francisco in the, what was that, what year was that? Was that 2019? Was it the Rams Super Bowl? Yeah.
2021.
Yeah, 2021. God, I don't know why the Rams winning the Super Bowl feels so long ago, yet not. I think it's because I get the Patriots Rams Super Bowl 2019 in my mind. But yeah, I have the Rams beating San Francisco. So that means if you go to, hang on, give me a second. It's been a long night. Hey, there you are. Hey, buddy. How you doing, brother?
Good,
Let's
man.
go to our Super Bowl picks. Your Super Bowl pick is, and I would love if this happened, this might be the most random fucking Super Bowl of all time. The Miami Dolphins and the Detroit Lions. You have Tua going boo to Brian Flores, throwing for 439 yards. Hey, wouldn't it be awesome if somehow I can't happen. Damn it.
Dolphins and Vikings.
Yeah, I just can't. I would love that, but I would be really worried if Sam Darnold makes the Super Bowl before Dak Prescott. But anyway, you have Tua going 32 for 39, 430. I love the fact you even went 32 for 39, 439 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and you have them beating Detroit in what would be an absolute thriller. By the way, respect for not giving Detroit 38. That means they kicked the field goal somewhere, or maybe went for 2. I'll give them that. That would be a fun Super Bowl, though, for real.
Yeah, it's 59. Both these teams have been in the Super Bowl, and Detroit has never been in the Super Bowl, and then Miami hasn't been in it since '84 season, so it'd be a 40-year anniversary almost. And this is 2 different quarterbacks that are trying to prove themselves. Goff has been to the Super Bowl, flopped. I think he'll have a great game in this. Tua, with Brian Flores' situation, and then getting the confidence booster from Mike McDaniel, I think he's going to overcome. Team's going to be healthy. I just think it'll be a really good story, and it'll be 2 teams that are going to be monsters for the next decade, I feel.
And it's funny. I don't even think I had Miami making the playoffs this year. But you're not wrong in everything you say. I don't want to say this is conservative because I don't really feel it is, because I think the conservative pick is, San Francisco and Kansas City again. Yeah. I have what I think would be an absolute phenomenal, the Ravens versus the Rams. I have Lamar Jackson finally breaking through. You didn't pick, and I didn't expect you to pick this up. So Lamar Jackson, I have as the MVP. His 267 yards passing and 200 yards rushing is the exact byline that Vince Young had against USC. I did that on purpose. I added 4 total touchdowns because in that game, Vince Young didn't throw for a touchdown. He ran for 3. So I'm going to say that Lamar Jackson hits Mark Andrews on a rollout. I think it'll be a great, phenomenal Super Bowl. I know a lot of people, and I get it, with money and the world today, I think a lot of people keep expecting the NFL to start to slowly decline because that's what, you see baseball. Look, baseball is great, but like baseball isn't where it was in the 60s or the 50s. I don't think it's anytime soon because your Super Bowl is very plausible. My Super Bowl is very plausible. There's 20 other scenarios that are all very plausible. And for as frustrating as we get with the salary cap, and it is frustrating because you want to sign your guy. You want to draft these guys and you want to sign them and you want those guys to be Cowboys or Eagles or whatever it is for the rest of their lives. It is shown that anything can happen in the NFL. And that's, I'll take everybody being 9-8 if it gives us amazing games. And you could even make the case that outside of the Patriots-Rams Super Bowl, the Carolina-Denver Super Bowl, every Super Bowl has been almost too good. Like, okay, we kind of want to blow out. Like, this is kind of getting boring. Everybody's always down to the last quarter.
Oh, like Seattle and the Broncos in 2013. Or
Seattle Broncos. I say Carolina Broncos. Well, I guess Carolina Broncos was kind of bad too.
It was kind of bad, yeah.
But yeah, Seattle was it 42-8 or something like that. But yeah, but again, think about that. I grew up in an era where there were no good Super Bowls. Like I was too late for the Steelers and the Cowboys. And in fact, for 35 years, when you ranked the Super Bowls, it was those two Steeler games and the Cowboys, and then the Bengals, Niners in 89 or 88. And I know some people will say, well, what about the Bengals, Niners in 82? Go look at the box score. That score was way closer than the actual game was. We've now gotten an era where since 2000, there's not been a lot of bad Super Bowls. I mean, they've all been usually pretty compelling. And I think that's where, right or wrong, you can hate it. You can hate Roger Goodell. You can hate all the money and all that. But right or wrong, that's where the NFL's got it right.
Yeah, we had that outlier during COVID where the Buccaneers just destroyed the Chiefs. It was Patrick Mahomes' first bad game. And the Buccaneers defense, they just figured out how to get to him.
Well, the Chiefs had a beat-up offensive line. They were terrible. And I still contend that's almost like the Aikman 94 NFC title game. That might have been actually Patrick Mahomes' best game as a player, but because they couldn't catch the ball and he was getting hit every time. I mean, this dude threw the ball perpendicular to the ground to a wide open guy, and he said, I'm good. I don't need to catch that.
All right. So you have the Ravens winning the Super Bowl, and I have the Miami Dolphins winning the Super Bowl. We both have AFC teams, so that might be indicative of how we feel this 2024 season is looking as far as like power ranking between the conferences.
And we both have AFC teams winning, not named Kansas City.
That is because no team in Super Bowl history has ever won 3 straight. Now the Packers have won 3 straight NFL championships back in the 20s and the 60s. In the 60s was 65, 66, which was the first season of the Super Bowl, and 67. So they won back-to-back Super Bowls, but they didn't win 3 straight. The last NFL champion was the Packers in 65.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so there's no team in NFL history has ever won 3 straight Super Bowls. That's why I can't pick the Chiefs. And that's the reason why you can't pick the Chiefs.
Well, and to be honest with you, too, it's real easy to pick the Chiefs. Like I said, it's real. I mean, yes, we will. You and I have always said this. We're never going to be Skip Bayless. We're not going to say things just to say things, but you also don't want to just pick San Francisco, Kansas City. That's boring. Now, my question for you, turn it back into Outdrank the Coverage, the Dallas Cowboys show. Is Mike McCarthy the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys after this season?
No.
You think he's fired?
Yeah, I think he's fired. I think he doesn't reach the all-in
Wait. You have them in the NFC title game. Mm-hmm. I can't see Jerry firing him if he makes it to the title game.
Okay. He'll still be fired, but yeah, okay.
No, I'm just saying, like, I say that. Okay, so if they roll out and go 14-3, the number 1 seed, and then lose at home in the NFC title game, okay, yeah, I can see that. But by you agree with me, they're not going to win the division. If they make the NFC title game as a wild card, I just don't think Jerry,
Only reason I say that is because the whole all-in thing.
Yeah, again, you got to let that go.
To me, in prior years, if they make it to the NFC title game, keep things as is, just keep adding pieces.
Yeah.
But when Jerry Jones says that all in, I'm thinking they win a Super Bowl or bust.
It's funny because I don't have them I have them losing in the division round. And for better or worse, I have it being where it's like I said, it's a really good game. They lose on the road to the number 1 seed, 34-31. They kick a field goal with 5 seconds left. I think Jerry goes, well, I can't tear it down now. Like, we're so close. Again, right or wrong, that's the frustrating part, because I would say in my scenario, I'd rather them be like, hey, Mike, we really appreciate you. But, Arthur Smith's out there. We want to bring him and Brian.
Shut up. Shut up. Let him stay in Pittsburgh as an offensive coordinator. Let him do trick gadget offensive schemes with Justin Fields in the backfield, Russell Wilson under center, and Cordell Patterson somehow is on that team, and he's doing stuff. Just let him stay out in the Northeast coast. Yeah. Do not wish that on us.
Don't you wish that juju on me, Bobby Ray? Yeah. All right, as I tell Noe every week,
that hawk and spit on that thing. You get
me? We are done. I want to remind everybody we have a Patreon. You can check that out. Just go to patreon.com/L4 Media Company. We're going to be doing a fantasy football show. By the way, our fantasy football draft will be next week. And if you are a fantasy football player and listening, if you sign up to our Patreon, that counts as your buy-in for the league. If you're interested, by the way, of a league, email us. Just email me, txbroadcaster75@gmail.com, or message us on Facebook, Outdrank the Coverage. We'll start a third league. We will happily do that. I'm only in 9 leagues so far. I could use some more. Shut up. That's not the point. I can't help it, dude. I'm a whore. Like, seriously, we're driving back from Corpus, and studio wife graciously decides to drive. She loves to drive when we're hungover. So I'm sitting there, and I've got my Switch, and I'm playing Tecmo Super Bowl, and I just won with the Dallas Cowboys and Doug Cosby at tight end. And then I start looking at it, and I got the email like, hey, you got a draft coming up. Would you like to join another league? You know what? I would. Oh, thank you for joining another league. Would you like to join another league? You know what? Sure. And next thing I know, I've got 9 leagues. I could take more leagues, but I'm a sucker that way. And I got FanDuel.
This is the addiction no one has been treating for.
Oh, and by the way, I'm going to go to bed and watch the league tonight.
I need to start that since the season's about to start.
Yes, you do. But we will have some Patreon shows. Again, this is our Patreon. We will have some behind the Patreon wall fantasy football shows where, in fact, the show is going to be called No He Knows. And that's where I'm going to be the host. But I'm going to ask you, who are you playing this week? And because all jokes aside, I play multiple leagues. You play various different styles because you play in a dynasty league. I've never could get into that, but I think you would. I think it'd be really fun to have you talking your dynasty league and the moves you would make for other dynasty league members.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's a different mindset you have to have for it. My mindset for dynasty is completely different than what I have for the year by year teams. So, or just PPR versus standard. So, yeah,
it feels like for some reason PPR leagues have kind of died down. Like, that was the standard Yahoo league. And I know ESPN has a league, but Yahoo's kind of what everybody likes. The interface is real easy and it's fun. And it feels like about 5 years ago, the PPR league started dying. And if you look, it's funny we say that because you would think in today's era of running backs catching the ball, PPRs would be all over because you can get a running back that only has 400 yards rushing, but he has 40 catches. And that's 40 points that we all want, But anyway.
Larry Centers.
He's from Texas.
Yeah.
He worked for the railroad. He used to go into my mom's credit union. My mom works for the railroad credit union. He used to go to that credit union all the time. Nice. Anyway, you have anything else to add?
No, I'm looking forward to our drafts this weekend. I'm looking forward to the NFL season. I'm looking forward to hang out with you in a couple of weeks.
Oh, MVP of the league. I forgot to ask you. Sorry, MVP of the league.
2024.
I think it's Dak.
No, he was second this past season. MVP of the league will be
Sam Darnold.
Sam? No. I'm going to go ahead and say Jared Goff.
I have no problem with that. I think it's just Dak because it feels like if you look over the last 10 years, whoever finishes second, that next year they kind of get it. You know, it kind of
No,
steps forward.
I hear you there. I think just with Jared Goff, just that momentum he got going into the playoffs. You know, the Jared Goff chance the Lions are doing, well in the wild card game against the Rams, and also at the NFL draft. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how that momentum shifts into 2024.
All right. So we will be back in 2 weeks. Is it 2 weeks?
In office, in
Yeah,
studio.
2 weeks. You'll be in office. We'll be watching the Monday Night Football game, the Niners versus the Jets, as we talk week 1 reactions of the NFL, and we fire Mike McCarthy because I don't know why. I don't, I grew up where Dallas always won the first week and they always won Monday night.
Yep.
It feels like over the last 20 years, it's the exact opposite on first week. So, oh, wow. And that's a hard proof there, buddy. Respect. I feel like Cleveland, I don't know, man, because Deshaun Watson, anyway.
If they lose 26-10, there's going to be some rumblings going into week 2.
Oh yeah, the only way you're happy going to Cleveland and losing is if you lose 28-27, weird things happen, the offense looks good, defense is still figuring it out. No, I agree with that. All right, until next time, he's in